you get a free first half to this race because of the conditions that you've just outlined. But it is the third quarter of the race where you get found out because it gets a bit technical, some gradients, and also the fatigue really starts to kick in there.
Yeah, we're going to go over that when we look at the course map in more detail, but there is a section of this race where you have to go north-south. It's quite frankly a little bit of a boring stretch. Krista, you've run this race a number of times. You were saying earlier that you didn't even remember the part because I think it's sort of so mind-numbing at certain points, but it's a real challenge. The marathon, you have to sort of break down your 42K effort into those increments, and I think that 25 to 30K stretch, which is what we're dubbing the Bluffers Boulevard now, is going to be the trickiest part. It's going to be the most telling part of this race, I think.
We're getting screens that are showing all aspects of the race at the moment. The elites are warming up. What would you be doing right now with 30 minutes to go to race start?
Well, probably at this point, I would be in the middle of my warm-up, maybe 15 minutes of easy jogging. And, you know, the longer the event, the less you have to do to warm up. So, it's perfect temperature, so you don't need to do a long warm-up. So it's, staying calm and just, being around with other people. Some people prefer to do their own thing and, they might be listening to music, but it's also enjoying it so that can keep your nerves right where they need to be.
This time last year, you were on the start line. You getting any vicarious feelings of wanting to be out there, the old adrenaline going a little bit?
This is definitely my favorite race in the whole world. There's no doubt about that. I've done it 5 times, and it was also an excellent opportunity to go to Berlin. So having done that just a few weeks ago, I know I wouldn't be in good shape to be running today. I've been enjoying my downtime.
Well, it's a combined marathon and half marathon. There's 27,000 people expected across all of them. Huge national contingents. We'll speak a little bit about the Mexican and the Greek influence on this race. We've also, commemorating 30 years of the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, got 30 Guinness World Record attempts. Some of them on paper look absolutely bizarre. Some of them will look even more bizarre when we get to see them. But lots of races within a race. First of all, we're going to salute the fact that in the 23rd year of its sponsorship, Scotiabank is still the title sponsor of this event. And we have the opportunity to hear from their Vice President of Sponsorship, that is Mike Tasevsky. Well, he actually spoke grandly of what the marathon has done for them and their charity fundraising efforts at Scotiabank when we launched at the Expo on Thursday. It's a long-term partnership. It's a blue-chip partnership. Let's go down and hear from Mike Tasevsky from Scotiabank.
I think the importance of the marathon is really what it does for the community. The Scotiabank Charity Challenge, it was established in 2003 with only 32 charities. And I look at it today, we have over 500 charities nationwide. Those charities over the term since 2003 have raised over $75 million, allowing us to continue to give back to the young and build vibrant communities. The uniqueness of Scotiabank's participation in the Charity Challenges is that we pay the fees, allowing the organizations to represent 100% of the dollars raised to give back to the community. It's exciting this year. We've almost got 300 Scotiabankers participating. 77 of them are part of the Charity Challenge. To date, they've raised almost $33,000. And keep in mind, you can still donate a month later and hopefully increase that number even greater to give back to the community. The personal connection is really seeing all the charities come together. The excitement that happens when they cross that finish line with their shirts on, it really brings the community together. I also have a personal connection. My son is running, so I'm so excited to see him cross that finish line. I'm going to be there to cheer him on.
Well, I think when you look at a classic event, you need 3 ingredients. A blue chip sponsor is one of them. Supportive city council is another, and we'll be hearing from the mayor just before the race gets underway. And the other element is the entrepreneurial spirit that was brought to this event by Alan Brooks, who founded it 30 years ago, but a man who we'll also be hearing from who's a bit of a force of nature. So he didn't just let it lie in 1990. He has built it, and all day, every day, he's trying to raise the profile. Let's have a look at some of the super stats from this race. 55,000 have crossed the start line. Those are the current records. What do you think? 2:06.52. It's going to take a bit of good fortune, isn't it, on the men's side?
Well, I think we've got some runners that are really capable of that. Obviously, defending champion Benson Kipruto is looking to run under 2:07, which is his personal best. And then 2-time winner Phil Munroe is going to be going after that all-comers record, which he set here 2 years ago.
And did you know the late Ed Whitlock? I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but he was an extraordinary character. He almost came to running late and almost had his 30s in his 70s, didn't he?
Yes, a wonderful person who so many people just loved and, looked up to, and very humble man, and, soft-spoken, and just, really great relationship with Alan Brooks and what he's done for this race and the running community. So many people look up to him with the records he did.
Sadly missed. He was one of a kind, but it is almost signposting the way that as people are getting older, they're not slowing down in marathon terms. It is a mature runner's sport. Yeah, what about that women's course record? Any danger? I mean, we're not going to be too far off that, are we?
Again, on the women's side, we've got a collection of 4 or 5 women who are sort of floating around that 222 to 224 ability level. If someone can have a breakthrough today, if someone has trained to their absolute peak of their fitness for this event, you could see it go under. They're certainly going to go out in that 222 range of pace. I mean, we saw, Krista, you were at the technical meeting last night. For those who are not familiar, a technical meeting is sort of when all of the elite runners put their cards on the table and say, this is the pace I want to be running tomorrow. And so at the technical meeting, I believe the women's, the front pack of the women was around that 222 all-comers record pace is what they're going to go out after.
I think so. I think often that the plan can change in the last few days leading up to it, especially how athletes feel and, obviously the conditions in terms of weather. But I also know, too, from experience that you can have a perfect plan with the pacers and it all goes out the window in the first 2 kilometers if it just isn't clicking the right way.
And I think it's a race where you prepared for it for months, you're held on the start line, everything builds that moment, and the gun is almost a release of adrenaline, isn't it? So... yeah, we'll see who's got their nerves under control as well as everything else. So we're looking at images of the masses arriving. Not too many wrapped up. The spectators are. Look at the runners. It's nice conditions out there. It was pretty icy at this point last year, wasn't it?
I think it was pretty cool because a lot of us wore head coverings, toques, whatever you want to call it. And
that was the word. That was the word. I remember that beanie
Lanny
hat.
had to.
Beanie hat.
Exactly. And, gloves and arm warmers and that kind of thing. And I think most kept them on right until the end. Often you are wearing, extra layers and you shed them along the way as you get warm.
We just got a little glimpse of one of the race T-shirts here. And Toronto prides itself on its designs, doesn't it? It doesn't want medals that just get put in a box. It doesn't want T-shirts that only get worn for gardening. It wants design classics, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a local designer here in Toronto named Richard Kaczynski. Sorry, Richard, if I butchered your last name there. Who has been doing the design of the shirt for the last couple of years, and they look really good. Like, I always evaluate a race shirt of whether or not I want to use it as a throwaway at the next race. Yeah. And with the Waterfront Marathon shirts, I would say that you see a lot of people wearing them throughout the year, down on the lakeshore, doing their daily runs. So I think the race shirts are a hit. In terms of the medal,
let's take a look at it. An Inga Johnson classic.
Inga Johnson, who is part of the Canada Running Series crew, she designs a medal every year. This year, because it's the 30th anniversary, they went with something sort of sparkly and showing off the new logo, the new rebrand of the entire marathon, which was done especially for this 30th anniversary. In the past, there's been there's about a 10-year run of famous sites that you run along on the marathon course that were highlighted on the medal as well. So they've kind of become this like highly collectible thing in the Canadian running community.
Well, you can see it behind us, and you can see it on our shirts. It gets the TO there, but it's actually a broad representation of how the course goes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, sort of the design has been very cleverly integrating all aspects of that. Obviously, it's a waterfront marathon. Toronto is a city on a lake, a very large lake. It's almost like an ocean. So there's that like kind of touch of blue. And then in terms of the shape of the course as well, and obviously the TO cooked in there as well.
Well, it's the culmination of a week of activities building up to the full marathon and half marathon here today. And one of the activities that took place earlier in the week was cementing with the local communities, especially the Greek and Italian communities. It was the torch ceremony, do we call it, earlier in the week? Let's have a look at the imagery from that that took place on Thursday evening.
So I'm here because we have a special, it's a very special occasion. As you know, the marathon race originates from Greece. The historic event that inspired it all took place in Greece more than 2,500 years ago, and there's a very big Greek connection to that. And out of the 800 marathon races that take place all around the world, the Toronto Waterfront Marathon really stands out because it's now in the top tier. And it's also its 30th anniversary this year. So to mark this special occasion, Greece decided to extend the privilege, which has so far been reserved only for the Boston Marathon, which, as you know, is the only other marathon all around the world which is as old as the Athens one. So this year we're bringing from Greece special wreaths. They are made of olive branches. They have been plated in gold. So on Sunday, when the race is over, I will be there to present those wreaths to the two Canadian winners, the man and the woman, who will also qualify for the World Championships. I will be running myself. Of course, I consider myself a recreational runner. I'm in for the fun of it. But it's also a great chance, you know, to run in the streets of Toronto and to live that atmosphere, which is associated always with all the runs that Canada Running Series organizes.
We shouldn't underestimate the prestige associated with that award, because there is a connection between Boston and the Olympics in that they were both created in 1896. So we're used to seeing those laurel wreaths crowned to the victors in ancient games. But for Toronto to be put alongside that, and for that to be the high point of the conclusion of our broadcast, the gold laurel wreath for the Canadian champion, is pretty special, isn't it? Very symbolic.
Very special. And I can remember in 2018 in Boston, Shalane Flanagan going up to Des Linden and, talking about the wreath and how pretty it was. And that is the big thing, right? That's what you want. And so to see it in gold, and it's just beautiful. It'll be very special for that Canadian man and woman that gets to wear that home.
Well, we should mention there was a handover ceremony for that from the Consul General of Greece at the Expo on Thursday. The Consul General from Japan also came along, and the national champions today will get the gold wreath. They'll also get a Tokyo 2020 mascot each, and there's not too many of those in circulation just yet. So the merch is out there. That will be on display at the presentation. But let's count down now to the start of this year's race and reflect back on some of the great moments in the last couple of years across the finish line of the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon. This is Kipruto, the surprise winner, I guess, Michael, a year ago.
Yeah, I would say so. I think everyone going into it thought that Philemon Roden was going to be a three-peat, but Kipruto had the race of his life at the time. He's back this year, ran a very solid race last year.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a tradition with the East Africans where they flame very brightly, unexpectedly, and then don't often defend. The next athlete we're going to be seeing has defended, but he had a rough time last year. Where would you put them in the possibility of winning, the previous champions for the last 3 years? Who would you put your money on?
I put my money on Philemon Rono. I think he did not like getting beat last year, and he's a competitive guy. He runs with the Global Sports Camp, obviously the legendary now, the man, the myth, the legend, Eliud Kipchoge. He trains with him. Rono has a lot of international experience, and he knows the course really well. And he's a competitor. I mean, when you watch the finish line footage from him 2 years ago, breaking the all-comers record and winning, he's pumped. Like, he's totally fired up when he wins. And I think last year he got dropped in the last 10K, had a really rough second half of the race, and I don't expect that to happen again this year.
Let's have a look at the exuberance of that moment when he set what is still the Canadian all-comers record and really had a bit of energy to burn across the line. Look at this, baby police, as they call him. That's because he is a serving policeman, but he looks about 12 years old, doesn't he? Look at that. Pleased to win. I imagine if you're a criminal in his district in Kenya, you'd have no worries about being handcuffed, but you would never be able to outrun him. And he claimed to be in broadly the same sort of shape that he was in when he set this all-comers record, so who knows? He's a character. It would be a good story if he were to, because he is the nearest thing to Mr. Toronto, isn't he, in terms of the overseas contingent. He knows his way around the course, he knows how to win, and he could do it again. If he's true on his form leading in, he could be the man to beat. And
I think what I'm looking to see is the international field to move this race forward, to move it into maybe a 2.6 low or a 2.05 race. We're seeing this trend towards faster and faster marathons, and the most elite runners taking big risks now. I think after the Kipchoge breakthrough, especially in the last couple of weeks with the 159, you're going to see more and more East African runners that are just going to go for it. And obviously today, I think it's going to be a little bit more measured out. They're going to just go for the Canadian all-comers record. So we're going to see 205, 206 pace in the first half. But I'd love to see a breakthrough, especially from a guy like Philman Rono.
Well, the moment of the race last year, or of any year in the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, was the national record by Cam Levins. Let's just relive those moments again from 12 months ago. And remember that he's on the start line again. He knew it from about half a mile out, I would think. He was pretty certain.
Yeah, there's some footage of him checking his watch with a few hundred meters to go, and you knew that he was doing the math. You saw like the 400 meter to go sign, and then he's looking at his watch and he's thinking, what can I run a 400 in? And he knew he was well under that 2:10.09 that stood for over 40 years.
So we've been chatting about it. Which Cam do you think we've got turning up today? That Cam, or one that's just, worried about whether he'll make the team?
Well, I think last year he was probably a bit conservative, debuting in the marathon, not knowing what to expect, and entering that zone of, how is it really going to feel when I've got 10K to go? So I think he's definitely more confident. He's obviously familiar with this race course, having done it last year. At the same time, I think we're going to see that he's going to be conservative just to secure that spot for Tokyo 2020. And maybe if he's feeling good, he'll push it in the, later parts of the race. But I think he might just be playing it safe today just to secure that spot.
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean to interrupt, but a couple of months ago, the talk was that he was not satisfied with just being a Canadian record holder, that he wanted to become a true elite international top tier athlete. He wanted to go 208, 206, something like, very, very low into the twos. And there was talk that he would be trying that in Toronto, that he would go out with the first pace group in that 206 range. He's tempered his expectations. He is now, I think, looking to just stay in that 211, 211.30, which is the standard for Tokyo, the time standard for Tokyo, and looking to protect that place going into next year.
Well, he's joined on the start line by his fellow teammate, or his fellow Canadian, Reid Coulsat, and every time I like Reid. He's always good company at the breakfast table. He gets asked about brewing beer just because he was the front man for the official ale, and he takes that all in good part. But let's look back to the days when he had a dodgy moustache, but was running well on this course in 2011. Reid Coulsat having another shot at the games next year. There he is in the black. Who is he channeling there? Is it Ron Burgundy?
I think he's channeling the great legends of the 1970s running circuit. The Bill Rogers, that sort.
And he's canny, so he knows what he might have to run if he's to be selected for Tokyo based on a list of competitors. And he thinks the smart money, the spread bet, is around 2:12.30. Is he still in that sort of shape, do you think?
I think that he's in that shape to do that. He's had a good build, and he's got a different perspective now. He's got 2 kids, and sometimes he doesn't get the sleep during the night that he normally would. But, he's a solid marathon runner. He has 5 marathons under 2:11.30. So he knows what he's in for. He knows that it's going to hurt. And I do know he's also very motivated. He'd love to make a 3rd Olympic team, and that would be wonderful for him.
Kenzie Middleton in the women's event is looking to repeat what she did last year, where she was the Canadian national champion. Let's relive those moments with her from 2018. And what do you think? Favorite for the team?
Kenzie is, she has really had a good year. She has made a lot of changes since last year, paid more attention to a lot of the little details. Last year, debuting, she wasn't, quite sure what to expect. Maybe she was a bit conservative last year. I know that she felt good the whole race, and that's pretty unusual that you can say that. So she's probably perfected her fueling plan and, everything from strength and rest to core workouts and everything. She trains with Emma Bates, and we know that she had a great race last weekend in Chicago. So I think we're going to see, a good race from Kenzie today, probably similar to Cam in that she might just be conservative to try to secure her spot as well.
Exciting because it is the classic hare and tortoise distance, isn't it? We've had a look at some of the key names and those that have made their mark in previous years. Let's have a look now at the full start list, men and women, and just talk you through some of the athletes who could contend. So that's the men's elite start. Of course, there are people from outside those lists who could challenge, but by and large, the podium places are going to come from that list.
A man we've not talked about yet that you need to pay attention to is Lemmy Baranu, who is a Boston Marathon champion, so he knows how to win a tough race in adverse conditions with a trickier course, but he's also run 2:04.
Yeah.
So he's one of the best runners that Canada has ever seen set foot in this country to run a marathon. So I think Baranu is going to be in the mix. I'm not sure about his fitness, but he definitely has the wheels. He's got the capability, the natural talent to win this race and to do something special.
And we'll have a look out too for Juan Luis Barrios, because he is looking to make the team for next year for Mexico. I don't think he'll be challenging around 206, 207, but in the sort of Cam Levin's range around 211, he could be one of the men to watch. It's a multinational field. We've got every continent, every state of Canada, I think every state of the US also represented in this lineup. So
We call them provinces.
Oh,
Jeff. Come on.
provinces. I do beg of it. Sorry,
Killed on
I've
Twitter
done it
right now
again.
for that.
Let's move on to the women's elite field and have a look at who's in the lineup there, the full lineup. What do you reckon? If you had to bet $1, have I got the currency right? If you had to bet $1, where would it go?
Oh, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's definitely a deep field. I think that Betsy Sena is maybe someone that we'll see as a surprise. She had to DNF in Chicago last weekend because of food poisoning. So she's someone that we might see up at the top, and that would be really exciting for her that she's got this opportunity to have that second race to make up for her illness last weekend.
When we met her and announced her at the expo on Thursday, she gave the account of her food poisoning and how it had affected her, how she was now clear. I didn't realise at that point that she'd actually gone to halfway in the marathon, feeling rough and really struggling, and then decided to bail and has had 7 days. But do you think that will have taken something out of her? Right? There's only one way to find out, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure what her halftime was, but I think it was pretty good.
Yes.
So she basically had a really solid workout last weekend. And now that she's been able to, stay hydrated and keep food down, she might be feeling really good.
One of the other characters we'll mention in that lineup is hip number 5 there, Magdalene Messiah. Full name Magdalene Messiah, or Mags as she's known.
Yeah.
Messiah Robertson, because she's married to Jake Robertson of New Zealand, who featured for a long way last year. And she's a Raptors fan as well.
Yeah, she's quite the character. She's a huge Raptors fan, follows the NBA. Her and her husband, Jake, one of the Kiwi twins, one of the Robertson twins, who's become quite well known in sort of the elite running circles because he and his brother moved to Kenya over a decade ago and have been living there ever since. Mags is here running. She's apparently in great shape. Jake was giving us a little bit of intel that she's quite fit. He's been doing a lot of the runs with her, so I think she's going to be ready to go, ready to do something special as well. So she'll be in that mix. I think when you look down the list, you're going to see it's going to be a big pack in the first 20, even 30K. I think you're going to see 6, 7 women all sticking together, sitting behind the pacer group.
Just to give you a little bit more on the Masai Robertson love story, Jake Robertson pushed Mo Farah right to the wire at the Great North Run 2 or 3 years ago and then hung around at the finish line, and nobody could quite understand why. Whipped out an engagement ring from his back pocket, or I think the manager handed it to him, and proposed to her on the finish line. I think she was second in the women's race as well.
Can you imagine if he carried the ring with him for an entire half? Like, that would just be on my mind the entire time, especially if you're battling it out with Mo Farah the entire time.
I think he may have had it in a fob pocket or something like that. But it was the full down on one knee, and my colleague Chris Temple was getting the immediate reaction, few tears. They're now married. Is that a bit of a girl story, or is that something that... would you be happy with that?
Oh, well... I don't know. I mean, sure, it would be pretty exciting and special. And I think I agree with Michael. I'd be a bit concerned if I was carrying it, especially if it was taped to one of my gels and, you throw
Can
it
you
away.
imagine? Oh, man.
But,
So... we've talked a lot about the story within a story, and it's about how the Canadians force their way into the Games in Tokyo next year. The man that is in the reckoning and who has got the full scoop on it is Reid Coulsat. Let's see how he interprets that selection policy.
Qualifying for Tokyo 2020 is more complicated than past years. Before, you would just have to hit a time standard. Now there are 3 ways. You can either finish top 5 at a gold label race, like the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, top 10 at a World Marathon Major. That's your Bostons, Londons, New York City. There's the time qualification. The women have a standard, the men have a standard. It is 2:29:30 for women and 2:11:30 for men. After that, if you don't quite hit that standard, you're fairly close, then you can make it on world ranking. A world ranking, though, is more than one performance. You have to have two. It can be 2 marathons, or it can be a marathon and a distance of at least half marathon and up. So it might be a half marathon, a 25K race, or a 30K race. And you have to use those performances, plus you might get bonus points if you finish high up at a national championship, which the Toronto Marathon is. It's our Canadian championship. Or if it's a gold label, silver label, or world marathon major, world champs, there's even more bonus points to be had for either top 10 to top 15, depending on the race. Once you've satisfied the IAAF criteria for Tokyo 2020, each country can select 3 men and 3 women who have achieved the IAAF criteria, and it's up to the country to pick what 3 athletes they want.
It's not exactly crystal clear, is it?
No.
It's a complicated situation that could go right round to June next year, couldn't it?
Right. And, Reed explained it in a very good way for people to understand. And it's interesting because you can sit and have dinner with someone and it's not that complicated. And then 15 minutes later, you're still talking about it. Yes, it's complicated. Definitely different than 2016. And I think the key message there at the end is, Athletic Canada will then select our athletes from the list they get from the IAAF.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a bit subjective. That's going to be tricky, but they've got the criteria listed and they will have to make that decision with the information that they have based on athletes' performances.
Okay, well, here's a couple of men who are crystal clear. We're going to be going down to the start line and we're going to be joining Laura, and she is with race director Alan Brooks. But before that, the Mayor of Toronto, Councillor John Tory.
Good morning, everyone. We're here at the start line. The sun is slowly making its way out. I think it's going to warm up pretty soon. It's looking like it's going to be a great day. The runners are getting their minds and bodies ready for the long journey ahead of them. I'm here with race director Alan Brooks and Mayor John Tory. You're up early to cheer on the runners, but it doesn't look like you're going to be running this year.
No, I've had a bit of Achilles surgery, and I'm not sure I could make it anyway. But having said that, I'm certainly here to cheer on the runners and to cheer on the whole race. This is a very big occasion for Toronto. We're very proud of the Scotiabank Waterfront Marathon, and it puts Toronto on the map. We have hundreds of people here from 70 different countries. We have charities here locally that are benefiting to the tune of millions of dollars from this race, and of course thousands of Torontonians are participating. It's a big event for them. So, we're just very happy this is happening, hopefully for many, many years to come. And of course, it's a special year because it's the year before the Olympics, and a lot of people are here to prove something, and I hope they do.
Yeah, very exciting year for sure. And Alan, 30 years and going strong. We're here, bigger and better than ever. What can we look forward to this year?
It gets more exciting every year. I think it is a sort of record international participation this year. As Mayor Tory said, almost 1,000 Americans and over 700 Mexicans. So I want to say, bienvenidos a todos los corredores mexicanos. Mucho éxito esta mañana. There really is an excitement in the air, preparing people hoping to qualify for the Tokyo Games. We have the Consul General here from Japan, the Consul General from Greece, and you can just feel the excitement here. But as Mayor Tory was saying, it's a day where we come together and celebrate Toronto on our streets.
Awesome. Well, it's shaping up to be a great race and things are going to get started very soon.
Well said, both of them. We were shocked to see that Achilles surgery on the Mayor, but we weren't shocked to hear Alan greet everybody in Spanish, because we knew when we were playing Marathon Bingo before the transmission that he would greet people in Spanish. Huge contingent, though, from Mexico, as it was in Chicago. But it's a specific thing here in Toronto that it's twinned with Mexico. So the one certainty is the course. Well, almost certain is moved by 53 metres. Let's have a look at the graphic, and you're the world expert on this, Michael. Talk us through what lies ahead of them.
Well, the start goes up University Avenue, which is a nice wide boulevard, and for the first couple of K, you're going slightly uphill. It's just the slightest incline, which I actually think is a good thing, because it kind of tampers you down a little bit, calms you down. As you said before, when the gun goes off, everyone goes nuts, right?
Yeah.
They run as often way above their heads. So in this case, even for the elites, it just sort of slows things down a little bit. It cools your jets. You're going to pass by Queen's Park, which is the where the Ontario government does their thing. And we're going to loop around the park up to 2K, and you're going to hang a left past the Royal Ontario Museum and its incredible architecture, which we'll see about 10 minutes into the race, or 6 minutes into the race. We're going to run along Bloor Street. It's going to take you through that new jog, as you just said. This is a change from last year because there's been a bit of construction on Bloor Street. So between 3 and 4K, you're actually going down into the University of Toronto area. I think it's actually going to be a nicer stretch than previous years. And of course, here's the downhill part. You go all the way to the lake, and then you're out on the lakeshore.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be running into the wind. Per usual, the wind comes from the west. It's only about 15K an hour, so it's not going to be a huge factor. But this is definitely where you want to settle in, find your pace group, get your legs underneath you, get your rhythm going. 12.5K, you're out by High Park area, most western point of the course. That's where you turn around. You're running back with the wind to your back. 12K all the way across until those half marathoners split off at 20K. And then you lose that half marathon group to help carry you along. We're going to see some half marathoners running with the elite runners.
But you do get the cheer zones. But then Bluffers Boulevard. Is this Bluffers Boulevard?
Correct. Yeah. So there's this section here where the Pan Am Games actually had their village in 2015, right? See where it's like that mess right around 23, 26, 27. You actually go north-south. You run up Bayview Extension and back down. And that's a part of the course. It's a bit boring. It's a bit uphill. It's going to reveal the fitness or lack thereof of some of these athletes. And that's when we head east. Now you're going all the way to the East End, and you just come back, and then you're done downtown, big finish, very close to where the start of the race was.
And down at the start of the race, it is time for the national anthems of Canada and Greece with Anastasia Kakagiannis. So we are into the final 7 minutes. You can see some of the athletes just keeping one layer on, one or two stripped off, already raring to go.
Take a look at how many people there are, how many elite athletes there are in front of the starting area. This is about twice as many as you normally see doing their strides, doing their warm-up. This just goes to show how many Canadians have piled in for the marathon trials here, along with, of course, that deep international field.
So we're taking a guess on the weather. Let's see what it's like for real. The weather forecast now on screen. Mrs. Humidity, and I don't like humidity with the cold. Would that suit you, or is that getting better?
Well, the temperature's still cool. So like I said before, when it's cooler, the humidity is not going to take a toll like it would when it's warmer. And again, it's individual. So if you're used to training in humidity, someone like Becky Wade, who's here from the US, she lives in Boulder now, but she's done a lot of running in Texas where she's from. So, you know, it might not be something that affects her, but sun and cloud, so that's good. I know it's a good idea if it's quite sunny to wear a hat and sunglasses just so you're not squinting. You can get some tension in your neck. But I mean, really, it looks like a good day. And it's hard to have everything fall into place perfectly on race day. Definitely, it's not, you know, pouring and cold and like it was in Boston in 2018. But, you know, you'll take this day probably and be happy with it.
Well, we could say good for running, less good for spectating. If you're on the move, it's not bad. If you're stood around, you perhaps need some layers on. Is that wind direction off the lake, as it were? Is that as expected, east-northeast?
Absolutely. And I think all things considered, this is a pretty banner day for weather-wise when it comes to this race. This race, it seems like the night before this race, it's always like gusting. You can hear the wind blowing, rattling your windows, and you're worried that it's going to be this like devastating day in terms of running. But, you know, with the wind at about 12 kilometers an hour, that's negligible. You're not going to really feel that, especially if you're sitting in a group.
Let's find out when they get underway, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating or the running, as it were. So there you see 27,000 runners stretched all the way back. These are the elites that are in the foreground. They're the ones that are being corralled late, that are allowed to take their layers off late. But we are really now into that most nerve-wracking time, isn't it? The last 3 or 4 minutes. Nothing you can do but wait.
That's right. This is where you're just getting rid of that layer of clothing. You're double, triple tying your shoelaces and, you know, making sure that everything is on you that you need and staying relaxed. We see some people doing some high knees and stretching.
That's Josh Griffiths of Wales. So he's not part of the England team, but he had the distinction on his debut of winning the Jim Peters Trophy at the London Marathon for the first British athlete home, 2:14.
This is Rory Linkletter.
Sorry to interrupt you, Krista. Yeah, that's Rory Linkletter, who's one of the top Canadians. Really interesting character. 23 years old, debut marathon. Has never run a road race in his life. He's run only on the track.
What could possibly go wrong?
I think we're going to see something special out of him today. I would say he's a dark horse pick to do, who knows, 2:13, 2:12, 2:11 maybe?
Well, you know, he's with the Hoka Group in Flagstaff, and I would think that they would select their athletes in a pretty strategic way. So I think that speaks to him as a person, that they've invested in him. Certainly, he's around, you know, amazing athletes who he can look up to and who would probably be able to guide him through this first marathon experience.
Have you run mixed starts and female-only starts?
Yes.
And which do you prefer at this point?
I don't think I have a preference, to be honest.
Really?
No.
Less crowded in a women's only?
That's true. In fact, in Berlin this year, I was a little overwhelmed with how large the pack was with the women. We were going about, you know, for a 2:30 marathon pace. And that was really crowded. A lot of men around us. So where it got difficult was at the stations where we're grabbing our hydration bottles. You have to basically, you know, check your blind spot and signal your turn.
There's Cam Levins there. last
man
person
on.
added in here.
Just after the boarding has closed, one club class passenger arrives. Cam Levins, has he got the beanie on? He has. What do we call it? It's not a beanie.
A toque. We call it a toque.
A beanie? I think that's acceptable.
Yeah, I think beanies.
Okay.
That is
I've got a hard time
specifically,
last year.
the design is a beanie design, I would say.
Toque is warm at the hockey arena with the pom-pom.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a bit too much for running with.
So Councillor Mayor Torry has got the klaxon, but so too has the Consul General of Greece. That is Victor Malagudis in the blue. There's Alan Brooks. And the lady alongside is Takahito Ito, the Japanese Consul General, who donated those mascot prizes to the leading competitors. So it's a four-way hooter. They need to be coordinated like an orchestra. We've got just under 2 minutes to race start. And you can see the whole array of camera bikes, safety bikes, police bikes, outriders. They've got to have their toes behind the line. That's always hilarious, isn't it? 42.2 kilometres, but it won't count unless your toe is behind the line.
That's why they say towing the line.
Yeah, I guess. And you can see the T-shirts being thrown off to one side. The last instructions they'll have had is don't make those layers a trip hazard, whether it's a bin liner or a T-shirt. Throw it off outside the racing line. You need quite a strong arm if you're in the middle there, though, don't you?
I've been hit with one of those shirts, the Chicago Marathon. Somebody threw one and it landed on my head once. And it's a free-for-all at the start of the race, right? Especially a race of this magnitude, of this size. As you can see, you know, thousands of people behind the elite athletes. It's packed.
So we make it final 60 seconds of countdown. We're inside the last minute. They'll be getting an instruction before they fire those hooters. Are we going to get all-comers records? Are we going to get qualifying times for Tokyo? Are we going to get personal bests? It looks like it's a great day for marathon running. Stand by. Cue the scary heartbeat music.
Meritorious just taking in the music.
Yeah.
He's loving it.
Is he a runner? Is it a running injury or just an Achilles?
No, it's not a running injury, I don't think. Achilles, I wonder what happened to him.
Good luck, everybody. Have a great day. And you're off.
So away we go. We are racing in the 2019 Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon. 27,000 runners, more than 100 countries represented. They've gone out fast, or it looks fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, well, they'll be going out probably just under 3-minute kilometer pace. It's really hard to not run that quickly, especially when you're an elite level athlete that can run 204, 205, 206.
Well, it's also a surge to get clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just to get clear of flying heels and elbows and all the rest of it. Beautiful sight. This is drone camera footage we're getting from above. We'll see some of that along the shores of the lake as well. Beautiful aerial shots giving you the scale of the event as well as the pace of it at the front of the field.
And as per expectation, we're seeing a good group of 8 or 9 of the East African runners at the front here coming together. We're going to get a better sense of who's who in a couple of seconds here. In the orange vest there, you can see that's Philemon Rono, the two-time champion here. And just behind him in the white and black with the kind of white
beanie hat
is Benson Kipruto.
Yeah.
And the white dude with the Canadian singlet on is, I believe, one of the half marathon runners that's probably piggybacking on for a pretty quick time.
And I think right at the back of that group is Lemmy, the fastest man ever to toe the line in the orange and white with the orange arm warmers. That's the Ethiopian who's winner in Boston, winner in Dubai, and is strongly favoured. But where's Cam? He's already sat quite a long way back. I can see his hat, and he must be 80, 90 metres down. This is a very cautious opening kilometre, as we suspected it might be for him.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the Canadian record is his already, and obviously the prize money would be an incentive, but I think that he is really just wanting to secure that spot as top Canadian, and he respects the distance in the sport, and I think anything can happen. If he doesn't stick with his game plan, he may not have that spot, and he would regret it.
Yeah, I think, it's been a patchier season for him. It's been a patchier year for him. Maybe another year of learning for him. He was entered in London. It didn't happen. He's had some issues. He ran the Philly half, the rock and roll half in Philly 6 weeks ago, I guess it was now, and stepped off the course. Didn't have a great run, although the conditions were not great there. And so he's probably not coming in with the level of confidence that he had coming into last year. That said, we're still expecting to see him go in and around that 2:11 pace, and I know that that's the pacer he's going to be sitting behind.
Well, I mean, we've talked a couple of times about a race within a race. Look at it. Already you've got 2 distinct packs, and that poor fella in the middle is deciding, well, do I latch onto the back here, or do I drop back and wait for the second group? Because 2.5 minutes into a 2-hour race, he's in no man's land, isn't he?
Lest we forget that a 2:06 marathon paced out is still a 1:03 half marathon, which is pretty spicy, particularly for a national class athlete, which is what you're going to get in the half marathon here.
So this section of the course, Alan described, I think, on the little graphic that was uploaded to social media as the main boulevard. Did he call it that? Of the city centre, tree-lined and wide and spectacular.
It's a pretty beautiful street. I mean, right now they're curving around. I don't know why they're not running the tangent here. They should be cutting closer left. I know, they should be cutting closer left here, which is what they're doing now. They're making a correction. They probably just ran an extra 10 meters there. Yeah. They're going around Queen's Park right now, and there's actually a really beautiful almost perfect 800-meter loop in Queen's Park, which some of the greatest runners in Canadian history have done workouts at. U of T brings their athletes there, and Gabriella Stafford, who's got the 1,500-meter Canadian record.
We've adopted her for Scotland now.
Yeah, you've stolen her from us.
Sorry to break it to you.
Yes, I know. She's been training there. Ran 3:56 recently. She's done 1 million repeats in that park right there. In fact, you can see part of the trail there. So you're passing by the Queen's Park, which is the Ontario government buildings.
Well, we're into the second kilometre. There's more than 40 kilometres to go, but what an unbelievable gap there is, and what decisions and what anxieties there are around committing around the clusters or bridging gaps at this stage.
I think one thing to point out as well is we could see some half marathon runners in there.
Yeah.
The people that are in that little chase pack behind that might be in no man's zone. And trying to keep up with the fastest runners in this race is also something that might appeal to them at this point in the race.
So all of the athletes that we were expecting to win the race are in there. I wasn't. I thought Juan Luis Barrios might have given it an early flourish, but again, you could be toast if you go with this group at 2:06 and your target is really 2:12 at the end.
You can't mess around with that variance. A 2:11, 2:12, even a 2:10, even a 2:08. If you're a 2:08 guy and you go out with the 2:06 group, you're playing with fire. So. This is the group that we were expecting to see from the onset. Pretty much all the players are there from what I can tell thus far. And I think they're probably going to settle in. They're going to get a good rhythm going. You might see one or two guys drop off in the first half just because perhaps it's not their day. But apart from that, I fully expect to see Philemon Rono, Kipruto, Baranu, those characters in this group at least until 20 miles, 30K.
So we're looking at the shoes, because shoes were a big talking point in the world of marathons a week ago, where we had a sub 2 hour project, a challenge, and then we had a women's world record in Chicago. And as much as our sport got good publicity, a lot of the talk was about shoes and whether there should be regulations around carbon fiber plates, reactive sponge, pods on the sole. And I don't know, we were talking about it on the way up, mixed views on that, because technology is surely part of the evolution of sport. We see it in Formula One, we see it in tennis rackets, we see it in cycling. Why not in running? And where do you draw the line if you decide it's an artificial assistance, the design of the shoe?
You know, I don't know where I'm at with it. I wrestle back and forth with it. My main issue is I'm now at this place where I'm like, I'm curious to see what someone like Eliud Kipchoge could do in a quote-unquote normal pair of shoes. He doesn't run in a pair of old school racing flats, minimal racing flats in a number of years now. So I'd be really curious to see what he could do in a normal pair of shoes. I bet you it's probably not all that far off, but we don't know. So, I mean, obviously there are athletes in the field that have got the carbon plate shoe. Cam Levins, he's running in a shoe that's got a carbon plate in it. So, and it's not only the carbon plate, it's also the midsole and the energy return that the midsole technology is giving, the thickness of the midsole as well. So,
and a lot of the shoe companies have made their own shoes with the carbon fiber plate, so that, you know, levels the playing field to some degree. I know I had mixed feelings when the first shoe came out, and then you just realized it's kind of like gels. I know someone said when gels first came out, people thought, oh, that's cheating, you know. Back in our day, it was flat Coke, and now they've got these gels that they take, and that's just standard. So
progress.
Because you've run in a pair of shoes with carbon plate.
Yes, Saucony does have a prototype, just as the other brands do. But I think where it gets complicated is the multiple plates, and, you know, where do you draw the line there?
So let's go to the elite women, checking out the shoes there. There's those pink variety that have been part of the controversy. Just looking to see all of the suspects in there. Of course, they're going to get a lot of male accompaniment, especially from the male half marathon runners.
Right, so there will be the two lead pacers that should stay in front, block the wind, you know, even point out little things on the road to not trip over. And that's helpful for the lead women who are here as their career. And it can be difficult because for some runners, this is not their income. And, you know, they want to get in there and be with the lead females and get, you know, fast half marathon times or fast full marathon times. And that can be a little frustrating when the pacers are there for their job, and that's for the women. So I think it's communicating that when you're out there and just pointing and, you know, nodding or shaking your head.
And I will say that the sort of club runners, you can see they're all sort of sitting behind the elite women, which I think is pretty respectful and shows that they know how to race, they know how to run.
Or they've been shouted at by the cameras.
It could be that too, yeah. Either way, they're doing the right thing by kind of staying out of the way of the race. There was an incident a few years ago in the course where there were some in the elite women's group where one of the women had an unfortunate step into a streetcar track on Bathurst, and there were quite a few club level male runners around at the time. There's some question about whether or not they should have just been out of the way, and they should, you know,
So the ones I recognise by sight in the... Oh, banana ahead of them. How did that happen? That's a Guinness World Record attempt. Let's go over to the Canadian men. That's the third of our 4 cameras that are covering the race live. We'll leave Banana Man for just a while on his way to a Guinness World Record. And there's Cam Levins riding just behind Juan Luis Barrios, as we suspected. So you've got to assume that this is operating around 2:12.
And Trevor Hoffbauer is right there in front of Cam with the white and black top and the black shorts. So obviously he's in this with Cam to go for that spot. So it's great to see, you know, a few men going for that spot for Tokyo 2020. And, you know, Trevor lives in Calgary, and he was the Canadian champion in 2017, I believe.
That's right, yes.
We know that we watched him cross the line, really excited, celebrating a big breakthrough race for him. And so it's great to see him running with Cam.
Cam doesn't look comfortable to me here. He was looking to the side. He looks a little bit distracted. We saw a lot of him. He almost had his own cam a year ago when we were following his progress to that fabulous record. What do you reckon? You're the expert on this, Michael. I think he's sitting a fair way back and also looks a little bit sort of uncomfortable and distracted. I'm not sure.
He is about one step back from where I would want him to be. I'd want him to be tucked right in there behind these guys. But as we look back to last year's race, he kind of yo-yoed a little bit in last year's race as well, just trying to get his comfort level going. And certainly in the first, I'd say 30 minutes of a marathon, your body needs to regulate. It needs to get comfortable with that pace. And maybe he's just feeling a little unsettled right now. And I mean, better at the back than at the front of the pack. You don't want to be charging and pushing the pacer to move even faster. So I think this isn't a terrible place for him to be. The thing we need to check in on is if he starts to slip at all.
Yeah. Well, the rest of them look pretty comfortable. He looks all right. It's just that because we saw so much of him and are so used to watching him on these streets, he doesn't look quite as fluid or as comfortable as he did a year ago.
Evan Esselink is in there as well. He's wearing the black top and the black shorts. So he's out in BC with Richard Lee. And
which one? The taller
so
guy
he
or
just
the
left the
shorter
screen.
guy?
The shorter one,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
So this is a debut for him. So much like Rory, we're excited to see what he's able to do in his first marathon. And he had a great race earlier this year when he ran the Houston Half Marathon in 62:17, which is the fourth fastest time for a Canadian in the half marathon.
He could be the first guy coming out of this group very easily today. I'm actually surprised not to see Rory Linkletter.
But there he is, I think.
Oh, is he looming in the background?
Yeah, and I think he's already come to the front of that chasing group because I think he's probably decided this group will go away unless he makes a move quite early on. And also, don't forget, he doesn't know what he's doing in a marathon.
Yeah.
He's guessing because it's his debut. I'm not in an unkind way, but he may be seeing it like a track race and thinking I need to bridge that pretty quick.
Yes, that's true.
And I think we want to see a bunch of people together, right? I mean, we know Cameron Levins is an amazing athlete, but it definitely makes it more exciting for spectators to be watching, 4 or 5 men going after that spot, not just one.
Okay, back up in front. This is the head of the field. This is the elite men's race. Everybody's still in there. I think will 4 of those be pacemakers at this point? It may even be 5, I think, mightn't it?
They have a good pacing group here, and so the guys at the front there creating a little bit of a chevron are your pacers, and they're going to stick with these guys. I think the agreement is at least until 30K. So they should be doing the bulk of the work right now. Pacing style varies quite wildly. Some pacers, the idea is that they're just supposed to hit even split. So right now they're going to be hitting around a 3-minute kilometer and bringing them through in that. However, sometimes there's a little bit of communication, pick it up a little bit, or we're going a little downhill, let's move a little bit faster. But ultimately, we should be seeing right around, like you can see the one guy in the front checking the clock, right? And probably trying to make sure they're going to bring them into 5K. We're going to get a split in a couple of seconds here. And we should know with more clarity whether or not they're dialed in for that 2:06 pace.
Let me just explain a couple of the singlets. So the guy in the middle has got a Run Czech name on his shirt. There's a series of races in the Czech Republic centered on Prague and elsewhere, which all have IAAF Gold Label status. It's a guy called Carlos Capalbo, who is originally from Italy, who's created that series. He's now head of road running at the IAAF. They're all televised, there's prize money, and he's created a racing team off the back of that. So that's why you've got a Kenyan with a Czech name on his shirt. And alongside him in the green, in the orange and white, the NN running team is that Dutch-based team linked to the Global Sports Communication Agency, which has predominantly East African runners within there, both as pacers, male and female elite.
And of course, the aforementioned Eliud Kipchoge is sort of the figurehead of that group of the NN running team.
Yeah. It's about as blue chip a racing stable as you could get right now.
I think one thing to note too with the pacers is for some of them this is the beginning of what could be a very successful career where they start with a position where they can pace, earn a little bit of an income, and they have to be pretty fit to be pacing the fastest runners.
So that is 5K. They've just gone across the timing mats, unofficially 14:46, which I think is right on schedule for that high 2:06 time. But of course, it will depend on how many stay together, especially when they get to Bluffers Boulevard in the third quarter of the race. Lots of lunges for the drinks bottles, which always break up the rhythm. 14:52, you can see the official split now confirmed on the top right-hand corner. if you're a pacemaker only going to halfway, you don't need a drink, do you, really?
Oh, well,
An hour's running? An hour's running?
I would, I think. It depends, again, on the athlete and how they've trained their body, but certainly when they're running this pace, they would, need to stay hydrated and get some carbohydrates into them, and some of them may be going further.
We'll find out. Let's go back to the Canadian men's camera, the Cam. And there he is, still loitering at the back of the group. They're now approaching that same drink station that we've just seen. Runners get very superstitious about their drinks. If they've gone to the trouble of preparing it, by golly, they're going to have it, even if it means going sideways, lunging across people and grabbing it. 15...
I think it's very important to note that, right, they do have to be pretty fussy about their bottles, because when you're out there for 42 kilometers and you drink something that your stomach isn't used to, that can just be disastrous. No one wants to end their race with a story about the porta potty, and it happens to the best of us. And, it's something that sometimes you can't control, but certainly they have practiced consuming their fluids and to help hydrate them and to take their gels in, which is their source of carbohydrate or their fuel. So small sips along the way. You can see that the men are doing that so that they're just giving themselves a little bit of fuel rather than just a big gulp of it all at once and then tossing the bottle.
15:26 was their split. Let's go back to the elite women. Just a few hundred metres back down the road, Betsy Saina's in there. Ruth Chebitok is in there. Bekalech Gudeta is in there. So all of the suspects that's them through 15 kilometres. So around about 16:48 or thereabouts.
And just an update on the lead men and the lead Canadian men. That 14:52 translates to a 2:05:28 projected finishing time. So they're doing quite nicely, maybe even a little quick. Although, as we've been talking about all morning, that first half of the race, particularly that first 5K, is going to be your fastest 5K in the race. And for the elite Canadian men, it's 15:26, which is going to be a 2:10:15 pace right now. So they're actually moving along pretty nicely as well.
I'm looking at those tram tracks, and I think in the opening stages of a race where you're very nimble and your legs are very sharp, they're not an issue. When you're tired, you get your foot on the edge of one of those. Did you say you did that in a race?
No, it hasn't happened to me, but I know at the end of some long, easy runs, if I'm on the trail, you can tend to shuffle a little bit more. You're not picking up the knees. So I've, had some near falls over some roots and rocks, and you have to be very careful with that when your legs fatigue.
You lose your proprioception.
And the elite women are going through in projected 2:22:37.
I was going to say, so that's absolutely exactly on Canadian all-comers record and course record schedule. A long way to go, but these men, you would assume, will go further into their race than the equivalent in the elite men's race. So they could have pacemakers right the way through to the finish.
And just a runner of note here is Yves Sikowabu, who's wearing the Canadian singlet.
Yes.
He is a Canadian citizen. He is from Rwanda originally. He lost his parents in the genocide in Rwanda, and actually came as a junior running in the World Junior Track and Field Championships in Moncton several years ago, and stayed. Pretty harrowing story, actually.
Yeah.
He got in a bus in Moncton in the middle of the night and went to Ottawa and claimed refugee status, and has been here ever since.
Well, at the welcome speeches on Thursday, any civic dignitary from Toronto City Council is always keen to say what a welcoming and inclusive city Toronto is, and how it is a microcosm of the world. All communities represented here, and it's a very sort of welcoming and accommodating city.
I mean, we talk about how it's a world-class city quite often. It's sort of like one of the cliches of being a Torontonian. But it really is, from my understanding, the most multicultural city in the world. So, huge Ethiopian community, for example.
Yeah. So this is probably the largest of the groups that we're following. I think it's 10 or 11 in the elite men, 10 or 11 in the Canadian men. Let's go back, if we can, to the Canadian men, where Cam Levins is now looking a little bit more comfortable than he was, and in fact just easing his way to the front of the chasing group as we approach the 20-minute point into the race. So Levins, I don't know, it'd be funny to say that he had a bad patch so early in the race, but he didn't look comfortable, did he?
And I also have a split for you for the Canadian lead women's group, just to give you an update. We're going to get to the camera for that in a couple of seconds. You know, we're pretty hell bent on making sure that this is an equal distribution.
4
of the
cameras,
coverage.
4 stories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give you that update because we just got it, which is they went through in 17:22, and that's a projected 2:26:33 pace. So here we go. We've got something interesting going on here.
Yeah, so we can see Leslie Sexton here. I'm not sure that that syncs with the information we were just given. I think Leslie was going to be a little bit more conservative today, maybe in the low 2:30s. We see Kate Baisley there as well. And so the time that we were given, I'm going to...
You're querying it.
Well, it's definitely going to be Kenzie Middleton, I would assume, unless something has gone wrong. But I know Kenzie, much like Cam, won the Canadian Championship last year. It was her debut. She did it in 2:32. It seemed to be, you know, not overly difficult for her. She felt great the whole race. So probably the split we got would have been what Kenzie is doing at the moment.
And just give us a quick critique. I can't picture what your running style's like, but we've got a very low slung action there. And as we pan forward, very bouncy track action, a lot of kickback, you know, each to their own, but which is going to work best in this scenario?
I'm of the mindset that it doesn't really matter what you look like. You can be the ugliest of runners with not the prettiest form and have the fastest time. So Leslie Sexton is a very experienced runner. We know that she has done high mileage for several years and very successful with that. To do a 200-kilometer week is nothing new for her. Kate Baisley beside her is a mom of 3. She's had a surgery on her knee and obviously recovered from 3 pregnancies. So, you know, you can expect that their bodies have done different things to get themselves prepared for where they're at today.
So let's go from the Canadian women to the Canadian men. Not huge changes there, but it's a chance to look again at Cam Levins, who just shunted himself forward in the pack. Who's the guy giving high fives to spectators there?
Oh, that's Jeff Hoffbauer. He's one of the most animated guys in the entire sport.
I'm racing here because I want to qualify for Tokyo next year, and this is one of the best spots and opportunities to do so. It's always exciting to be back here. The marathon here in Toronto is always good and fast, and especially after having a good performance last year. I'm excited to see what can happen this time around. There hasn't been many significant changes from last year's training to this year's. I have done some faster workouts. I've changed up the way I'm doing some of my workouts. I tend to shift the speed around a little bit more rather than holding on to just one steady pace. But besides that, nothing huge. For anyone running their first marathon, don't let any nerves or anxiety guide you. Don't let that control you. If you've done everything you need to in preparation, you'll be able to handle it. You're ready.
Well, there aren't many authors where I've read all of their books, but one of them is Malcolm Gladwell, and I'm glad it wasn't just us that said that Cameron Levins, as we should be calling him, looks like Malcolm Gladwell. But apparently on the transmission last year, and as a result of that record by Cam Levins, Malcolm Gladwell, who is a runner, was saying how flattered he was by the comparison.
Yeah, he's, Malcolm Gladwell was a pretty accomplished high school runner here in Toronto. He is a Torontonian, so, and I know he's a big track nerd. I know he was going after, I think, I want to say like a sub 5-minute road mile last year.
Yeah.
So
he's still in shape.
So he's still in
great
shape.
Follows the sport
training.
Well.
Yeah. He's got a lot to say about things like doping and the shoes and that sort of thing. So, and just back to what you were saying before, the tall dude, Trevor Hoffbauer, is an interesting character. We'll talk about him in a minute, but let's just focus on Cam again.
Well, Cam said he came back from altitude where he goes to in South Utah with a good amount of facial hair, but he got rid of it all. I think he should have followed the spirit of the Australian team at the Doha World Championships, where all bar one of the men's team was sporting a 1970s Prefontaine moustache.
In that picture there, he sort of looks like he's like from in a 70s cop film or something like that.
Yeah, the missing Starsky and Hutch.
He's going to slide over the hood of a car.
He's going okay. I think possibly for superstition, he's wearing the beanie or whatever we're calling it that he wore last year, because it's not that cold. And he's also wearing those snooker referee Korean traffic warden gloves as well. And there's 1 or 2 sporting gloves in there, but I'm not sure it's that cold.
Yeah, you know what? Better safe than sorry. I find the extremities get stay coldest the longest, obviously, so his hands are probably going to stay cold. Good to keep them warm. You want to keep that flow going. You don't want to get rigid. You don't want to be clenching your fists. And obviously, heat escapes from the head the most quickly. So he's going to toss those probably. We'll see in the second half. Maybe like literally and figuratively, the gloves will come off. But for now, he's just keeping warm.
I'm just looking into tracking the Canadian women because we aren't able to get a shot of them right now. And it looks like the group that we were watching with Leslie Sexton and Kate also has Robin Mildren. And with the group that would be ahead of them, as we thought, Kenzie Middleton is with that group, as well as Dana Petereski, Tara Career, and Emily Setlak. So that group would be well formed with a good pack because Becky Wade is also there with her husband pacing her, Will. So that's, a group of about 6 or 7. And we can guess that there would also be some half marathoners in there. Rachel Hanna is doing the half marathon today. And I think her plan was to go out as well with about a 1:14 half.
So at the moment, everybody is on schedule for the target times, for the ambition times. We're not quite half an hour into the race. We're going to go back to the elite women, which is like a big old school outing, isn't it? It's got the teachers that are on the outside, the pupils in the middle, but all of the main suspects are in there, being well pace-made. And I don't know if there is a national running style, but just look at how the East African women hold their arms. It's that pitter-patter technique, and almost as if their wrists are strung together in the way that your mother used to put your gloves through the sleeves of your coat when you were a kid so you didn't lose them. So it elasticated up against their chests. It's almost like a national running technique, in my view. But they're all in there, and they're on schedule.
One thing to keep note of is you're going to see the differentiating factor of the red bib versus the silver bib.
Yeah.
The red bib are the marathon runners, and the silver indicates that they're running a half marathon. So that's your way to sort of very quickly extrapolate who's in the big race here and who's not.
Well, it's a 42.2 kilometre race, so we are approaching the 1/4 point, 10 kilometres. We'll go back to the elite men. We're coming up to 28 minutes. We'll look out for the timing mat as our first indicator that they're through 10 kilometres. And it's still the smooth and easy part of the course, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, we're heading out. We're on the lakeshore now. As you can see, the lake is to their left, our right in the picture. And so it's exposed, but I don't think it's sunny, but I don't think it's terribly warm, so it's not going to take that sort of a toll. They are still running into the wind at this point, although the wind is negligible. It's 10, 12 degrees.
And we can see that the wind turbine in the background there isn't moving at all. And
exactly.
I think this time last year it was getting up a bit of a head of steam. So a few gaps opening up here. I don't know if that's just the downhill stretching them out a little bit.
Good question. It's a little early for anybody to make a move. However, if somebody's not as fit as they were hoping to be, or they're just having a difficult time regulating, or they're finding it too cold, which is often the case, what you hear from the East African runners who train in Kenya or in Addis, in Ethiopia, is that they come to Canada and they find it a bit chilly here because they've just spent a summer training in East Africa and they're like, whoa.
Well, the Kenyan women...
7 degrees, it's freezing.
Well, they were shivering inside the expo hall, and I was thinking, this is like room temperature. What are you like?
Yeah, so you might see there might be some discomfort by a few of the athletes here, but for the most part, it looks like this pack is pretty well stitched together right now.
It's a massive gap. If you do look in any danger of going out the back door, it's a long, long, long way back to the next runner, isn't it?
Well, I'll make a bold prediction. 3 of these guys are going to get passed by people in the second group in the last 10K.
Yeah.
Because this is a race where it really, this pack shatters at around 20 miles, and many of the racers tend to go backwards at that point because the race becomes pretty daunting after you get dropped by the lead group.
So the most distinctive runner in there is the diminutive figure of Baby Police, Kipruto, in the orange and white half vest, right in the middle there, but by far the shortest of the runners in that group. 29.42 was their split. They slowed very slightly. I think they perhaps have over that last 5K segment, but still on schedule for course and all-comers record schedule. So we'll project that time forward for you. What have you got, Michael? What are we predicting?
I'm actually just waiting for the time projection to populate. We're using a spreadsheet that auto-populates when you enter the the split. It's just it's lagging a little bit here. I could do the math if you'd like, but just seeing.
Well, while you're
here.
doing the maths, we'll go back to the Cam and the group that includes Cam Levins, Juan Luis Barrios, who's closest to the camera there, the Mexican in the blue and orange with the with the sunglasses on. So perhaps that's for humidity.
Sun and cloud is what the prediction is.
So the front pack of men are at 2:05.19 projected finishing time.
And they all got the memo about green shoes today. Look at that.
Indeed, yeah. So this group is interesting. You've got Trevor Hoffbauer, who had a big breakthrough in the spring. He ran Hamburg, knocked his personal best down to a 2:16. So he's a 2:16 guy, but I think he's feeling pretty good right now because he's clearly going after something special. He's in that, they're going at 2:10, 2:11 pace. So and he actually looks quite comfortable. You'd think that if you were only in 2:16 shape by 30 minutes into the race, he'd start to look a little bit like, this is more of a half marathon pace than it is a marathon pace. But he looks pretty good right now. He's a very high energy guy, though.
Yeah, I've picked up on that. And I wonder if when we track back on this shot, we're looking for glimpses of Rory Linkletter. He was trying to bridge the gap as the debut marathon runner. That's
got somebody right there, yeah.
Yeah, that could be Linkletter on the charge. Now, is that wisdom or is that foolhardiness if it is him trying to run them down 30 minutes into the race on his own?
I would say, if that is him, he's in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Because if you feel like you're capable of running with these guys and you made an error in the first 5K or so, and you're way back with, say, a 2:15 pace group, that's a very big difference, and that's a lot of ground to cover.
At the same time, if you go out with the lead Canadian men and you aren't at that fitness, you can really make the later stages difficult if you're just beyond what you're capable of running.
Oh, absolutely.
So being cautious and conservative is probably best, and okay to be in no man's land.
Yeah.
But he is isolated if that's him. So we're going to go back to the elite women because they're approaching the 10-kilometre point. Everybody's still in there. We're getting in good and close. A lot of them have their first names on the bibs, which is black lettering on a red background. The ones I recognise by sight are the ones I had to coach for the press conference to say a few words in English. So I have spent time with them in corridors going through rehearsed lines, and that was Gudetta and Chebitok, and God bless them, they did do it when the big moment came. The English isn't their first, second or third language, but they did what was needed. And Banana Man is tucking in at the back of that group. So the most conspicuous of our Guinness World Record attempts. I'll tell you what that category is in a moment. I think it's a fruit-based marathon category.
You'd think if you're running in the banana suit, you'd get to the front, because you'd be the perfect windbreaker.
Shield.
But then at the same time, you're so distracting. I think it would drive me nuts staring at a banana peel for 2.5 hours.
He must be a decent runner, though, mustn't he?
Well, yeah. I mean, if he's going out in roughly 1:11, 1:12 half marathon pace, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Well, the only categories I can find off the bat are vegetables, and we all know a banana isn't a vegetable, but it will still be a Guinness World Record attempt. He's tucked in at the back of it. Imagine if these photos, well, these pictures are going around the world, the best women in the world and the best banana costume in the world.
I'm just looking too at the Canadian men that are behind the lead pack, and I would think that Rory is about 3:09 per kilometre. I was almost at the 10K split, I believe. And then we've got a larger group with Dylan Wykes, Thomas Toth, Sammy Drabal, Reed Krulsat, and Tristan Woodfine that are doing it about a 3:10, 3:11 per kilometre pace. So that looks like a good group of about 5 or 6 people.
33.50, the women's 10K split. I think the difference between Coolsat and others will be that they're playing a canny waiting game, whereas I think Rory Linkletter may have panicked, may have decided these gaps are too big because he's never seen anything like them before, and it's time to take action. But we'll see.
Yeah. So for that split, sorry to interrupt, Krista, but for that split, they're still looking at 2:22.46. That's what they're on.
So it's drifted by a couple of seconds.
A little bit,
but only that.
So hopefully we can zoom in here and see our Canadian women. We've been waiting to see them for quite a while. I know it's difficult for the lead packs to get them when you're on the motorcycle and with the video cameras, but let's take a look here. We've got Kenzie Middleton, who's wearing the black top and the black shorts and the bright green shoes, who was our national champion last year. On the left, Tara Career is running, and we know Wesley Career's wife, and she's with the Canadian group here. In the middle, with the USA top, is Becky Wade, and right in front of her is her husband, Will, so he's here to pace her personally. We can see Emily Setlack behind Becky from Kingston, and I'm just trying to see who else we can see in this pack, but...
34.11 as the 10K split, so they're really going for this.
They are. That's they're under 3:30 per K pace.
I had a chat with Kenzie at the press conference, or after the press conference on Friday, and I said, Kenzie, so the other top Canadian who was supposed to be in this field, Melindy Elmore, unfortunately had to drop this week because she has a hamstring injury. And I think the idea was that Melindy and Kenzie were going to go out, and they were going to go out pretty hard. And I asked Kenzie, like, so what's the plan now? Because you're sort of the top dog. You're able to kind of demand the pace and set the pace to a certain degree. And it seems like she's got a group of takers here, and she was suggesting to me that she's sort of in that 226.7 fitness.
Right. Well, she trains with Emma Bates.
Yeah.
And 225 last week in Chicago. I know I asked her about their training, and Emma's husband, Cameron, I believe his name is, they just got married yesterday. He would design some of their workouts a bit differently so that they weren't always comparing with each other, because we know that can be, a little bit difficult as an athlete. But certainly their long runs and their easy runs were together. But, I wouldn't be surprised at all if she starts to push, in the second half of this race to see how fast she can go. And definitely with a debut of 2:32 and her feeling as great as she did, we could see really great things with her.
The thing I found really interesting about Kenzie's race last year is I was waiting for her to show that lack of experience because it was her debut in the marathon last year. And she made the last 10K look so effortless, and she looked really pro running it. And I thought to myself, okay, this is a marathon runner. This is somebody who knows what they're doing at this distance and has a natural knack for it, much like Cam Levins did as well. So I'd be really interested to see if she can get close to the Canadian record today.
Exactly. That was going to be one of the things I was going to note today, is that we could see her going under Rachel Cliff's record of 226 high.
Man, that'd be exciting.
Last year she had Natasha Wodak pacing her, and I know Kenzie said, "Oh, I'm feeling so great," and Natasha said something like, "Yeah, you feel great until you don't, because it can really get nasty in the end." But it was impressive to see her. I don't want to say effortlessly, but when she crossed the line, she certainly was kind of bending over and taking some deep breaths. But I think that we're going to see bigger and better things from her today with the experience she's gained in the last year.
Want to hear something a little bit shocking?
All 4 races really shaping up very well. Last night I saw my first ice hockey game, the Maple Leafs, and that was at the Scotiabank Arena. That was world class. They are a world class sponsor of this event. Let's hear from Scotiabank.
My name is Jamal.
And my name is Christian.
And we're running the Scotiabank Charity Challenge. The group we're running for is the Kickback. The Kickback is an initiative that uses a sneaker as a conversation starter to empower inner city youth, both locally and globally.
The sneaker allows us to incorporate access to play, access to education, and instill confidence into our youth.
We've been running since the beginning of July, all the way up until now in preparation for this. There's about 25 of us, and we've all been running with the same intention and purpose of coming together as one and working towards a common goal.
Well, good work with the Kickback, official charity of the race. Good work, Scotiabank. We're back now with the elite men, the very first phalanx of runners going through. You can see that it is a spooky thinking game here, because if anybody is going through any kind of a bad patch and drop back, there is nobody imminently behind them. It is the Cam Levins pack that is probably, a minute and a half, 2 minutes back down the road at this point, Michael. So they've got to kind of hang in there now, 40 minutes into the race. Not quite at the 1/3 point, but everybody that we expect, including all the designated pacemakers, are in there.
Now they're running back here on the south side of the lake shore. So the lake itself is on the right-hand side for them. And so the wind is actually at their back right now. So this is the big, long stretch in this race where you get settled and you fly, because it's pretty much pancake flat for the next several kilometers. And you're just sailing the entire time. You got the wind to your back. It should be sort of set it and forget it at this point, until at least the halfway point.
Can we name check the Canadian in there with the silverback number who's doing the half marathon? Do you recognise him by sight? He's going to win the half marathon clearly, and he's going to run 63 minutes. So he's a decent runner. The guy just lurking at the back of the group. We haven't had a chance to.
Yeah, we'll get a name on that in a second here. But yeah, that's a pretty darn good time. We don't typically see anything under. We don't see anything under 105 typically in the half marathon. There's no prize money in the half marathon. The talent is generally funneled towards the marathon, particularly this year with the Canadian trials. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty phenomenal time.
Well, he's not there yet.
If we can maybe
still got to run the race. But,
take a look at the Canadian women again, that would be great. That we could talk a little bit about more about their race, just because we missed a good chunk at the beginning. I know. Speaking of the half marathon, Rachel Hanna was planning to go out at about 1:14, and we don't see her in this group. So, Michael, did you say you knew what the projected finish time was for the Canadian women?
they're at 2:24 pace right now, which is nuts.
That's fast. We do know the first half of this course is fast, but that's, wow, that's really something to see.
That's really fast.
Well, we can look forward to what they're going to achieve if they can stay on schedule, but all of the runners, all 27,000 runners, are going to look forward to the cheer zones. Let's see what's going on down at the designated cheer zones.
All right, we're at cheering site number 1. I'm here with Jenna. Jenna, tell us about your crew here.
We're the dance team from the University of Toronto. We're here today representing the Varsity Blues.
Awesome. So the first site, why is it important for you guys? You guys need some extra energy here.
Well, we want to make sure that they had their morning starting out right. We want to give them lots of energy, so that's why we're here today.
Awesome. So you guys are dancers. I need a dance move that I can use along the course to cheer on the runners.
Absolutely. We're going to teach you the jump clap. So you jump and you clap your hands together.
Okay.
Jump. Clap. Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
All right. I'm going to use that. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Keep on cheering.
Absolutely. Woo. Thank you.
Well, I trained Laura Da Silva as a dancer. She's entitled to her money back. This is the Canadian women. This is one of the stories of the race so far. Let's have a look at it.
Right, so this is the group that is going out pretty fast today. I guess about a 2:24, Michael, you said. So there we see Darren Lee at the pack there, who's doing the half marathon, leading that women's group. But
local runner, yeah.
One person we don't see in this group is Dana Petereski. And if this group is going 2:24, she's definitely, staying back, staying within her capability, because that definitely was faster than what she intended to do. So, if this is what Kenzie and the others are capable of doing, it's definitely going to be an exciting race.
So as they come around the corner, because we can't read the best, just identify them by gloves, shoes, or whatever.
So we have
who should be there and who shouldn't be there on form.
So we have Adam Horston, who is pacing that group, and then again Will, who's Becky's husband. Becky's in the blue from the U.S., and then we have Tara Career, who is on the far left with I can't quite see her right now. And let's see. So then just in front of her is Kenzie Middleton, who we expected. Now, Tara, I thought she was going to go out more at a 2:32, 2:31 pace, but maybe she's feeling good and decided to go with this group. Emily Setlak, there's someone who I think we could really see a great race. She ran really well in Philly a few weeks ago, and she's almost as old as me, and she is really having a phenomenal year. She's coached by Jim Finlayson, and she's just really putting it together. And I know she was thinking about possibly doing Chicago, but she put it together so that she could race in Toronto, which is a good race of hers.
So who would let's predict the finishing order there?
Well,
Kenzie should be the most comfortable, shouldn't she? But you would have thought she might be clear at this point.
Well, with Kenzie, like with the men's race, Kenzie Cam, and it'd be exciting to see them, being basically new marathoners at the sport, doing so well. But also it's great to see other people there in the mix, kind of giving them a run for their money, right? Because a lot of people want that spot for Tokyo 2020. And so definitely Emily is someone who, is running within her capability. I know she's got some slower marathon times a few years ago, but I think it's really coming together with her. She's had several personal bests this year.
The athlete at the back with the quite high shoulder carriage, is that a sign of strain, or is that how she runs?
That's Emily Setlack. That's the way she runs.
Okay.
That's right. I do know she does suffer from asthma.
Yes.
And I think that's more of an issue, I think, in the spring marathons, from what I've heard. Unfortunately, it's not something I've ever had to deal with, but that is the way she carries herself when she runs. Yeah.
So at the front of the field, there's a few gaps opening up. The pacemakers are still churning away there, but you can see that where there was once only a second between the leading 8 competitors, it's now been stretched out to 7 or 8 seconds. Baby Police still in there. He's the one carrying the bottle in third place, the 2-time champion, the Canadian all-comers record holder, and in fact so nonchalant that he can have a swig on his drink while he cruises. But there is definitely daylight opening up, and it's affecting Kipruto at the back there.
And I think the reason why we're seeing this little bit of a pull going on here is the last 5K split, they were a little slower.
Yeah.
They're now slipped back into the early 206s. They were dead on 205s before. So I wonder if Rono's just saying to the guys at the front, hey,
push on.
Let's keep going here.
Yeah.
So, from my understanding, the way the pacing system works in this race is, for the most part, these guys are going to click off the prescribed pace. But I think the lead person does get a little bit of input in terms of, like, can we pick it up a little bit?
Yeah.
Certainly with the Canadian men and women, there's a different design to the pacing group, which we can talk about a little bit in a couple of seconds. But okay, so the gang here is all sort of getting back together again. They're settling in. I think it was probably just a little bit of a choppy patch.
Well, and also a drink station, because Rono had collected a bottle and he perhaps had to deviate to get that, and so too the ones behind him. You saw them discarding the drinks to one side. They're approaching 9 kilometres on the other carriageway. Let's go back to the Cam, the Canadian men's pack, where they're taking on board their Sunday morning drinks, having a quick snot of the nostrils as well. And that pack, well, let's just check across. 1 or 2 showing their teeth, which is always a bit of a sign that they're straining more than perhaps they should be.
There's always a little bit of a tell when you're watching an athlete taking in their fuel, taking in their liquid, whether or not it's really comfortable for them to take a swig and miss a breath or two. I would say right now, I like the way Hofbauer looks. Evan Esselink tucked in there. He's having a sneaky good race right now. And, I mean, Cam's got nice form, but when he was taking the drink, he looked a little bit strained.
Yeah. Well, the athlete nearest the camera in the blue and the gloves closest to us is Juan Luis Barrios of Mexico. Mexico, a huge contingent here. I enjoyed meeting him. He was a commentator at Chicago Marathon last weekend for Telemundial. He's a nice perspective and outlook on the sport. He's a Pan American Games champion.
That's an interesting detail. Cam Levins and Barrios have actually raced each other before. They raced each other here in Toronto in the 5 and the 10,000 meters. And Barrios had one of the races of his life in the 5,000 meters and won gold here in 2015 at the Pan Am Games. And I just remember that last lap that Barrios threw down. He just devastated the field. So he's a good track runner.
Well, he's 3 or 4 marathons in now. He's had mixed experiences, but he is a charming man. We caught up with him earlier in the week. Let's hear what Juan Luis Barrios of Mexico had to say.
So I'm looking the standard for around 11:30 for the next Sunday. This year I ran in LA to 12, so I hope so the next Sunday gonna be better. In the last 12 weeks was thinking about the Toronto Marathon, training in altitude in similar weather, so cold. I like to be in a city with different people, from different places. This is like a very cultural city, and the life it's around here from the neighborhoods, like restaurants, a lot of restaurants, a lot of places to food. Very nice all the way front of the lake to make bicycle and sports, some activities with the kids. So it's like a very nice lifestyle of life here.
Well, hopefully his countdown to Tokyo begins here, but we're going back to the Canadian women's pack, where there have been a few developments and a few surprising landmarks along the way.
So I mentioned before how we couldn't see Dana Petereski with this group, and according to the tracker here, it looks like she's actually ahead of the Canadian women. It shows with 50 minutes into the race, she's at an average pace of about 3:26 per kilometer, which gives her a finish time of 2:22. And then on the screen, we can see the women where we've got Tara, Becky, who's an American, Kenzie, and Emily. They're at about a 3:29 per kilometer pace, which gives them about a 2:25 mid projected finish time.
So for the runaway leader in the Canadian Championships, is it reckless, is it brilliant, or is it a bit of each?
Well, Dana is not afraid to go out hard in the beginning. She is a solid runner. She has won the 30K around the Bay race many times. And, you know, it would be wonderful if this is the day that it came together for her. She represented Canada at the World Championships in London, and she's had a solid year of running some really good half marathons. And, you know, but
did anything point to that, though? Did anything point to two low 220s?
Well, she's not done it yet. She's not done
exactly.
it yet.
So, I mean, all credit to her for taking a risk and rolling the dice, but I think the smart play would, at the very least, be to be sitting in that pack in the mid 220s, not ahead of them.
Can they see her? Can they see her on this stretch? They should be able to, shouldn't they?
Yes, they will be able to at this point. If they're past, there was a little uphill they just went up, which is actually the biggest climb in the race, is this little bump of about 150, 200 meters that they just went up. That's really the toughest hill to run in this entire course, which is quite flat. So they should get a good vantage point of her from here on in, straight through, if she's just that. Like, she's actually quite a bit.
And there should be another pacer
with them,
with
her,
with the group.
We'll try to get some pictures on her at some point. Really interesting development. I'm really curious to see how this plays out. Is this going to be a race that's going to end in tears for Dana Petereski, or is she going to have a massive breakthrough? I mean, it'd be super exciting if she's able to hold on to this past 20 miles for sure.
Well, we're going looking for her with the camera somewhere between this pack and the elite women. They're all elite women, but this is the leading group, and you can see once again just a couple of gaps starting to open up. I suspect it was that same drink station where the women in particular, and this is, I'm not being sexist here, but they are sometimes obsessive about getting the drinks. I've seen them turn around and go back to get a drink rather than miss it and get something different at the next water station.
And ever so slightly, they've been slowing down a little bit. They're on pace for a 2:23 flat right now. So they've lost about 15 seconds per 5K split over the last 15 kilometers. So whether or not they're maybe just settling in and this is going to be the new normal for them across the rest of the race, or if it's kind of pulsing back and forth a little bit, it remains to be seen.
Is it Betsy Sainer at the back of that group with the pink arm warmers? She looks the least comfortable.
Yeah,
or is it her with the yellow arm warmers? There's two very similarly dressed.
Oh, yeah, that's Betsy.
Is it Sainer at the front?
Blue, yeah.
But that must mean that it's not Chebitok at the back, is it? No, Chebitok's in that leading group. But, well, they're all still comfortably in contention. It's just that it's a bit stretchy, that group at times.
I was chatting with Betsy at the breakfast before the start of the race, and she was super chill, very relaxed. She was talking to Rory Linkletter and his wife, and I don't think Rory and his wife had the best sleep. They're 3 time zones of difference right now, and new to this as well. So I think they had a tough time getting to sleep, and Betsy was saying, you'll be fine. I think she's coming from, if I'm not mistaken, Oregon, right? She went to Iowa State?
Yes, Iowa State, NCAA champion, indoors, outdoors, and at cross country. So very experienced. The other character with that sort of top knot with the black arm warmers and the black shorts and white singlet is Bekele Gudeta. She's run a 67:03 half marathon in Copenhagen. That was one of the lines I coached her to say. But this is her debut, and I think very soon she will be going into new territory and doing it in the company of, well, it is a big group. Let's count them. 7, 8 elite women in there. So nobody so far is discarded or dropped. But we're getting to the point where that could start to happen because this will test them. Good whooping from the runners on the other side as well. Nice.
Yeah, you get several kilometers where you're, as an elite level runner or a top end runner, you're actually running past the 20,000+ people that are also in the race with you. So I think it's both a benefit because it really kind of can fire you up and give you a lot of positive energy, but also it can be perhaps a little bit of a drain after a while because you're just like constantly getting these cheers. But that said, it's a really special dynamic of this course.
We have found the runaway leader in the Canadian Championships. There she is, way ahead of the pack and looking pretty good, and with company and pacemakers.
Right, so that is Dana Petereski. I think she's at about a 3:27 per kilometer pace, which would be a projected finish at about 2:25. And, you know, yeah, Dana goes out hard, but hey, go for it. This is the race to go for it and make your spot. And, you know, she's certainly not new to the marathon, but she's going to, you know, maybe just lay it all out there today. And yeah, she certainly looks very comfortable and right in there with their pacers where she should be, maybe getting a bit of protection from the wind. So she's 32 years old. She's from Windsor, but she moved out to Vancouver with her husband Josh a few years ago to train, and her best is 2:36 in Ottawa. We know Ottawa can be often quite hot and humid, so we're not quite seeing fast times there. Dana was the first Canadian this year at the Ottawa Marathon, ahead of Rachel, Hannah, and myself. So, you know, she's certainly got good kilometers in her legs, and she's not one who's going to post workouts and let everyone know how fast she's going. She just, you know, puts her head down, gets the work done, and focuses on what she needs to do.
I'm just looking at the gap behind her because I think the other women can still see her on this straight section, and notwithstanding that she's getting pacemaking assistance, they've still got her in their sights. It's Tokyo that's doing this, isn't it? At the age of 32, a shot at a Games 10 months from now, why not take a risk?
Well, I know in Ottawa this year, she was 6th, and it's the top 5 at a gold label race that get the criteria for Tokyo. So that stung a bit for her. You know, the 5th person was a bit ahead of her, but we have her 15-kilometer split at 51:33.
Yeah, that's 2:25 flat, pretty much.
So the group behind her with Tara and Kenzie, so they're about 30 seconds behind. So they would be able to see her ahead and certainly know she's within distance.
I mean, on the one hand, I love the aggression. I love the fact that she's going for it. You got to roll the dice. If you know yourself, you know your fitness, be honest with yourself. And if that's where she's really at, let's see it happen. Go for it. To heck with the rest of these women. Run 2:25. However, the marathon is not the first 32 kilometers of the race. The marathon is the last 10K.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'd rather be in that other pack right now. Settled, calm, confident, within myself, with people to work with, and also with pacers, and with a target.
And hunting rather than being hunted.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like the formation flying of the pacemakers. We learned a little bit about aerodynamics, didn't we, with the 159 in Vienna last week, where it's not a V shape, it's a reverse V. So these two guys doing a great job screening her. I did notice they just clipped heels about 150 yards back, but otherwise she's not having to do this on her own. She's got good pacemaking support.
Definitely. I'm not sure who's in the yellow. Maybe Michael, you'll know it. But you know, he's certainly a good height for her to get behind. And you know, there can be an advantage to running with a large group, but also when you're moving out to get your bottles, there can be a bit of congestion. So certainly that's something that she's not facing at this moment.
I'm wondering if these two pacers are like, I didn't sign up for this pace. I signed up for something slower than this. And they're thinking to themselves, I don't know if I'm going to make it through 35K doing this.
That's something to point out, because you have to be clear, what are the duties of the pacer? What is their contract? Are they there to run a certain time or to lead the lead Canadian, you know, to 30K or whatever it is? Because those can be two different things. If the goal was 2:29:30, we clearly see that there's a group formed a little bit faster than that. But then Tana's gone ahead as being lead Canadian in this group. So, you know, she's got pacers assigned for her to do that as well.
Well, let's leave her there just for now to see if her story remains a fairy story or a nightmare. And let's go back to the Canadian men, the cam, because the gloves are off, figuratively and literally.
The beanie's off as well.
The beanie, or what's the other one?
Toque.
No, we've dropped Toque.
Yeah, Toque is so last year. Juan Luis Barrios still got his welding goggles on as well. That's closer to the camera for No, he hasn't. That's Juan Luis Barrios is the athlete
behind.
Yeah, the right-hand side of the shot. But these are chugging along pretty well. I remember watching Cam Levins on this section of the race last year, and he really built up a good head of steam, which he kept going right the way to the finish. We're coming up to 1 hour.
Yeah, I wonder if he's starting to think to himself, okay, I'm settled down now. Maybe things weren't perfect in the first 5-10K, but now we're settled down. And I remember this, the muscle memory of this experience, the emotional memory of this experience, where it's like, oh yeah, I've done this before, I've been here. And now he's going through what we call the cheer mile. It's like literally a mile of, so I think 1,500, 2,000 meters of cheering groups. He's going to be, they just passed through here. They've got run crews from all around Toronto, Parkdale Roadrunners.
Scotiabank have got a team. Leslieville have got a cheer team. We've also got the Mexicans. That's why we were just checking in with Barrios, because there's like a Mexican wave. 2 kilometers of cheer zones. Nice echo as they go beneath the underpass.
And I think one thing to note about the cheer stations is certainly it's great to get you moving and excited, but you really have to have emotional control of yourself when you go through those areas, because if you're picking up your pace every time you go through a cheer section and then you're slowing down, that can make for a difficult race when no matter how many people are cheering for you, in the end, it's going to hurt.
Well, Barrios is leading a huge contingent of Mexicans, more than 1,000 runners here, or 700 to 1,000. But as they approach this cheer zone, this is what all runners, but especially Mexicans, can look forward to.
George, you organized this whole thing here. Tell us about this cheering site.
So this is the cheer section for the Mexican runners. We have over 700 runners that came from Mexico to run the marathon, the half marathon, and the 5K. And so this year with CRS, we joined up and we said, let's give them some support and let's give them a cheer section and show them what Toronto's all about.
And there's a push to get more Mexicans involved in the race?
Most definitely. We want to get more Mexicans up here to the race to show them what Toronto is like. And so this is a great way to sort of support that and support with our Mexican community here from Toronto, which you see behind me here, to cheer on our fellow Mexicans. And we hope to grow this year by year.
Awesome. Is there any tips on how to cheer on the runners in Spanish?
You know what? We've just been screaming Viva Mexico, which is Go Mexico, and that's getting them going alone.
All right, Viva Mexico!
Woo!
Mexico, I think, is the 3rd or 4th largest contingent at the New York City Marathon coming up in a couple of weeks as well. We're back with the elite men at the front of the field. They're approaching the halfway point. They're beyond 20 kilometers. 21.1 kilometers is the halfway mark. They have the slightly more technical and difficult half of the course still to come. We've lost 1 or 2 out the back door, but otherwise the ones you would have put $1 on to win the race are still in there. Notably, Baby Police, Philemon Rono, and Benson Kipruto, the defending champion, who's been there throughout in the white and black. He's back left as we look at it. Or is he in the same uniform front left now? Just trying to, it's very hard to read the...
It's hard to see from here. I mean, with the red bib, with the black writing, it's a bit tough to read. And they're just about to go through the half marathon split here.
That may have been the map
that was it there. That was it there, I think. So they're right around 2:06 flat pace right now. This section here, they're just going to kind of cruise through. The footing is a little bit off because there's been a ton of construction in this area. This is an area that used to be an industrial zone.
I run through here
and
from the hotel.
And it's changed rapidly in the last couple of years. Condos popping up left and right, like everywhere else in Toronto, but particularly here. So you got to watch your footing a little bit, but it's apart from that, it's quite straight, and you got the wind to your back as well.
But we are now approaching Bluffers Boulevard, aren't we, in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. 63.07, the official split, so just outside 2:06 pace, but all of the pacemakers still going. We would hope that at least 1 or 2 of them might manage it right the way through to 30 kilometres, another 8 or 9 kilometres of running to come. Again, as the drink station approaches, they drift across the road. It breaks up the formation and the rhythm a little bit, but they get on board those fluids and carbohydrates. Let's go back to the elite or Canadian men, the Cam Levins, Juan Luis Barrios group, because they will be approaching halfway as we get to 64 minutes. And there they are, everybody's still intact. One or two just breathing and sweating up a little bit more than they were. What's your assessment of that, Michael, as they approach the halfway point?
I mean, I think it's, they're just checking off the boxes right now. This is, according to script, actually a little bit ahead of schedule. I think the idea was to go in and around that 2:11:30 type Olympic standard pace, but in fact, they're going a little bit quicker. I think they're going to be right around 2:10, which I think someone like Cam Levins will probably be pretty happy with. I think that's sort of what he's aiming for today. Really curious to see what happens to someone like Trevor Hoffbauer, who's sitting at the back now. That's a big step for him. He's a 2:16 guy.
He's notably not quite so high-fivey now. I know there's nobody to high-five with, but he was quite sort of looking around and distracted, wasn't he?
And note the runner that's straggling off there. I think that's Evan Esselink, who is another first-timer in this event, 1:02 half guy. So quite a talented runner, but this pace is spicy.
Well, and Rory Linkletter hasn't bridged that gap as yet. He made a concerted effort to break through. So that's the halfway split, 64.59 officially. So you can do the maths very readily there. Just under 2:10 pace, comfortably inside qualification time for Tokyo, but a long way to go.
So what we're not seeing here is the chase pack for the Canadian men, and that would have Rory and Dylan Wykes, Thomas Toth, Reed Coulsat and Tristan Woodfine, and they're on pace for about a 2:13 mid finish. And that's about where I think Reed and Dylan were aiming to finish. So it's nice that they've got some others with them, and that, we're starting to see people spread out, which is, going to be expected. But we see Trevor just got his bottle, and he's going to try to make his way up to Cameron a bit. But we do see Evan just a little bit behind, losing connection a bit with that lead Canadian pack.
This is a do or die moment for someone like Trevor Hoffbauer, because he's in the second half of the race, and he drifted back. He made a very smart move. If he's going to run with these guys, he better stay with them. Look how classy he is, giving the pacer a bottle. What? What is going on? Trevor Hoffbauer, you are not the pacer. What are you doing?
He wants his pacer to be fueled.
Yeah.
He's a very busy.
The pacer's just like, what did he just give me?
He's Canadian.
Great.
He's a very busy man, isn't he?
Yeah.
Let's go back to our lead Canadian woman, who is not in glorious isolation, but she was some way back. So let's quickly check in with her.
Okay, so we have Dana, who's out at the front here, and I just got some numbers here. We do know that she's past the 15K point, and for the first K, she was averaging about 329 per K, or the first 5K, and then the second 5K about 322, a fast patch there, and then 329. I believe she's still on predicted pace for about 225. And then in the pack behind her, again, the chase pack for the Canadian women, we have Tara Career, Kenzie Middleton, Emily Setlak.
And what would you estimate that gap to be at the moment? Is it them that we're seeing when we get a straight section of road, about 40 seconds or so behind?
Well, I think the gap might be a bit longer than that, actually.
A minute?
It's about, probably about a minute, which is...
I think we're getting glimpses of the chasing group when we get a straight section of road. But when we go through these bendy sections beneath the underpass, they can't see her, and that's an opportunity. And she appears to have acquired a few friends along the way.
This is, this kind of drives me nuts. Like, these half marathon guys, there needs to be more communication. I think this is where the pacer actually needs to kind of step in a little bit and say, okay, move out of the way.
Yeah.
I know you're running your race here. I know it's important to you, and you're going after a PB or whatever. But, Tokyo is on the line right now for Dana Pitoreski. Yeah. So she wants to run a straight line. She doesn't want to be thrown. If this is an intense pace for her, if this is sort of knife's edge pace for her, which it has to be at 225 low, anything can start to kind of wear away at you mentally a little bit at this point. So you want to run a straight line. We're having a little bit we're under the Gardner right now, the Gardner Expressway. There's a lot of concrete, so we're having a little bit of technical issues with holding the picture, but...
Well, a little bit further up the road, things are starting to come to the boil in the elite men's race. You can see that cosy group with the drinks being served intermittently is starting to break up a little bit. Still, Philemon Rono in the centre of the shot there in the orange and the white. Still the defending champion, Kipruto, Benson Kipruto, the 207 man, as they take a nice welcome downhill sweep. 69 minutes into the race, less than an hour to run for these runners. Not wanting the drinks that are being offered by the volunteers there. Do a great job. But obviously they have their own personal drink stations all the way around. We'll give you a couple of super stats. We've got 17 clocks. We've got 18,000 goo gels. We've got 320,000 cups. And there are, how many volunteers? Haven't got that figured.
Countless.
A lot.
Countless, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, this is that section we've been talking about, which is the race deviates. It goes from running west to east along the lakeshore, and it's quite a straight, flat section with the wind to your back. And all of a sudden, you're going north. You're going north for a couple kilometers. It's a little jog, and you go around a hairpin turn and come back down. It's basically slotted in there to make the distance. It's no different than in Chicago, and you kind of go into no man's land for a little bit and then come back to the finish. So this is, I think, the mental check-in or check-out moment for this race. It sort of comes a little earlier than that typical 20-mile section, but this is a section where it can kind of wear on you a little bit. As you can see, it's a slight uphill. There's a slight grind to this. I mean, obviously you get it back when you go back in the other direction, but
there's some deep breathing going on there. You can tell that when the camera went in close. There's a bit of panting, which will extol a heavy price. We'll keep an eye on the elite men on their outward journey. Let's go a little bit further back down the road and check in with the elite women. We haven't seen them for a little while. They're all still in there. They've got good pacemaking job being done. Really, there hasn't been more than a metre or two between them.
They really
race,
have a solid group together.
Does that mean it's too slow?
Well, who knows? Maybe some of them aren't playing their cards quite yet, and they're going to have a good solid kick in the last 10K and make their move and get out in the lead pack. But, you know, they're probably just taking advantage of this, working together. And I often chuckle when people say, oh, the pacers do all the work. Well, I mean, they certainly do help, that you don't have to look at your watch and you trust that they're on the pace that you need to be. But, you know, they're moving their legs quickly and they're in rhythm, which is good. When you're too close, you certainly don't want to be, you know, bumping elbows and knocking into each other, which can, you know, obviously cause harm.
Well, we're looking at the halfway split for this group. It's going to include all 8 or 7 of them. It's not even easy to count them because they're so tightly packed in there. There's the mat, the sensor pads on the floor that will indicate the halfway split. So around about 71 and a half minutes at halfway, Michael.
yeah, that's about right. I mean, you know, it's... I don't know if the all-comers record is on the table for today for this group. However, at the same time, they're all together.
Yeah.
You're going to get a race out of this. They've gone through the halfway point. This is if I'm one of the women in this field right now, I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm at. And you just sort of stay in the pack, allow the pacers to do the work, and then just keep your eye on someone maybe trying for a break at this point.
The two that look very similar, dressed very similarly, are Magdalene Messiah Robertson and also Betsy Sainer. And I think it's Magdalene Messiah Robertson that's at the back of that group in the pink arm warmer. She's the one that with the connection with Jake Robertson, who proposed to her at the Great North Run. Let's catch up with what she had to say earlier in the week.
My name is Magdalene Messiah, and I'm from Iten, Kenya. I'm here today to race in Toronto Marathon because I watched last year on the TV, and this crowd was amazing. I was seeing it like because my husband was racing, and the crowd was just like going crazy, supporting the athletes. I just want to say that I've done like the best marathon build-up for this one. Like I've had 3 small months of good training. Like I haven't had to stop for any injuries or anything. And I ran 67:35 in Great North Run, which makes me really feel excited about what I'm gonna do on Sunday.
Very zen, isn't she? Very chilled, and that may well reap dividends in the second half of the race, but she's got a handful because there's 8 women in that elite group. We're going back to the second group that are chasing the Tokyo standard at around 2:11 and a half. They're straining a little bit more. Cam Levin's in there, Juan Luis Barrios in there, and this is showtime, I think, Michael.
This is going to be fascinating. The one big surprise for me is the tall guy on the right, Trevor Hoffbauer, still there, still looks very comfortable. Not giving any signs of fatigue just yet. And, you know, this would be the moment where you start to see that. You start to see the form slip a little bit. You start to see the breathing get a little bit more labored. You get the shoulders get tightened up. And he looks pretty loose, pretty relaxed. I like the line he's running. He's also, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a tight hairpin in a couple seconds for him here, but he's doing really well. The only thing he's got to be careful about is just not to expel too much of that emotional energy that can be a blessing or a curse for him, right?
Well, we mentioned the head-to-head between Barrios and Cam Levins on the track. Has Trevor ever raced against Cam Levins, or has he ever beaten him? Or got close?
Not even close. Not even
so this will be inspirational stuff for him, won't it?
Trevor Hoffbauer is a guy who kind of came out of nowhere a few years ago. He went and he ran a 67 half marathon a few years ago, and I mean, previous to this, he was like a basketball player in high school. He told me, and he came to running really late. And he's a tall guy. He's well over 6 feet tall. I think he's 6'4" or something like that. So this is a developing story right now. Hopefully it doesn't turn into, as you said before with Dana Pidereski, a nightmare, but so far so good for him. And meanwhile, the professional, Cam Levins, tucked in there, very smart, running a sneaky smart race right now, and should be interesting to see him and Barrios battle it out in the second half. They'll help each other out.
So I think Trevor just gave a wave to Rory as he went by there. And just to give some statistics on Trevor, he did the Sun Run this year. He was second in 29:30. The Under Armour 10K in 29:58, where he was second again. Did a race in Florida, which was a 15K. And he did the New York City Half Marathon in 67:31, which was earlier in March. The Edmonton Half Marathon in August with a time of 66:29, where he was sixth. But the big break for him this year was getting that 2:16:48 when he was in Hamburg. And I believe he was sick for a period of time in that build. So, you know, maybe he's had a healthy build this time and he's feeling well, and he's putting it out there today, keeping up with Cameron Levins.
Well, most elite runners don't regard the double back as an opportunity to high-five, salute, wave to the runners coming the other way. But he is very, very busy, as we've already identified. Now, we're just checking to see if we can go back and see the situation. Let's have a look at the elite men at the very sharp end of the field, because it looks as though there are a few developments there. That cozy group is now being stretched to full capacity. And is this Kipruto? I think it could be. We're struggling to read the numbers, and there are 3 identically dressed Kenyans in that group. Well, there were 2. But this could be the defending champion, starting to apply the screw, making a long run for home. And it is the all-comers record holder, Baby Police, Kipruto, that is keeping very close tabs on him, as Kenyan policemen do. Now let's go back to the story in the Canadian National Championships and our runaway leader.
So we have Dana Pidereski there at the front with her pacer, and she's on about a pace of a 2:26 finish. So that's about a minute slower than what we were looking at before. And just tracking online, we can see that Emily Setlak and Kenzie Middleton are together with about a 2:28 projected finish, and Tara Career has dropped from that group, so she's a little bit behind them.
Right, we're going to cut away from that very quickly back to the leading Canadians, because there's a little bit of daylight opening up. See, Trevor has dropped back. Levin's just about got his drinks bottle, and it's messy, isn't it? It's messy around the drink stations always.
Yeah,
They've got a surge again now.
And you have to practice that. You have to be prepared for slowing down and taking a drink, and your breathing is going to change a bit, so you have to just calm down a bit, get back to that rhythm when you've taken your fluids in. But, you know, it's necessary. If you're not getting those fluids in at this point in the race, you are not going to maintain this sort of an effort. It's science, right? So they've practiced this, and they have to get used to, you know, a little bit of, moving to the side and getting out of rhythm.
I know a huge feature of Cam Levin's success last year, he told me, was working with an exercise physiologist, Trent Stellingworth, who's at the forefront of managing heat. He was working with the athletes in Doha for Canada, who did quite well.
Yeah.
And managing heat and also managing nutrition and sweat rates and that sort of thing. And he worked with Cam on getting the balance perfect. And Cam actually went and got a lemonade mix from like a convenience store because Trent was like, okay, you need this type of sugars, you're looking for this concentration, this mix, this number of of grams of carbs per 100 milliliters. And Cam found this like lemonade in like some, you know, Safeway in the U.S. in Oregon where he lives. And that's what he's been drinking. But it worked really well for him.
I meant to ask Cameron, actually, if he was still consuming the same lemonade flavor.
So 2 questions here. Is Cam Levin struggling? Because he does seem to be drifting and struggling to stay in contention at the back of that group. And is Trevor Hoffbauer having the best run of his life and maybe putting himself on the plane for Tokyo?
So far, yes and yes. In terms of Cam, keep in mind, this was actually the section in last year's race where he was starting to mentally check out here and there.
Yeah.
And he admitted afterwards, he had a couple of kilometers where he was slipping a little bit, and there was a moment of self-talk where he said, okay, what am I doing here? What's the purpose? What's the goal? What pace am I running? Let's stay focused, and dialed it back in, and then crushed the last 10K. So it could be that situation where maybe this is the weak point in his marathon style of running. Remains to be seen. But you're right, he does look a little stressed. His face looks a little...
The temperature is about 10 degrees Celsius, so, you know, about 2 higher than what we started. And the sun is out, right?
Yeah.
You can see that it's really bright right now. I'm surprised that none of the athletes that we're seeing in this shot have any sunglasses on.
Yeah, sunglasses or hats.
Or hats. You know, that's a personal choice. Obviously, you do what works for you, but it can certainly help with, you know, you can squint and get some tension in your neck, but obviously sunglasses isn't something that these men use routinely.
So there is a Canadian story for Tokyo 2020 that is unfolding as we look at these pictures, but let's not also forget that Juan Luis Barrios in the centre of the shot in the blue and green is also making his bid against a 2:11:30 qualifying time to make the Mexican team, where they already have 2 men with the standard.
So far, so good for Barrios. He must be very happy right now with his choice to come to Toronto because he's got this group to run with, which I know in some races, even very high quality races, at this stage in a race, you don't have pacers at that 2:10, 2:11. I know if you're in a race like Rotterdam, for example, which is a very quick race, a gold label race, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And still, because of the quality at the front of the race, you don't necessarily get that special treatment. So Barrios is benefiting hugely from this Canadian Trials experience.
And if you were in that group, the one person you wouldn't want to have in your rearview mirror as you came into the final mile is Barrios, because he's got real wheels, hasn't he?
He's a sub-4 minute miler.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's going to take the place on you probably. Although Cam is also as well. So, yeah, I'm not sure who you'd pick in a 400 meter sprint, but
We do have some splits for the Canadian women. Dana has gone through half in 1:12:56, and Emily and Kenzie have gone through in 1:14:02.
so yeah. So if I'm Kenzie Middleton and Emily Setlak, I wonder if they're getting any feedback on the course from anyone. I wonder if they're getting any info from people on the side of the course.
That's
that can be
tough.
hugely beneficial.
Right, because, you know, as a spectator, obviously if you have someone that you're cheering for specifically, you could give them that sort of feedback, you know, how many seconds ahead the next person is, which is helpful, but yet, you know, it's a tough one. You don't want to yell out, you know, go Canada, and you know, you're giving one person information and maybe the other one is not aware.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the head of the field, where we're now just 35 minutes away from a predicted finishing time. They've regrouped. It tends to be drink stations that cause some of the artificial breaks in that group. We've still got Pacemakers doing a great job in there, and we've got the last 3 winners of the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon.
Pretty consistent. You know, at the 25K split, they were still on 2:06 low. So still delivering a very high quality race, going after that Canadian all-comers record. You know, if they get under the 2:06:30 mark, there's an extra 10 grand for them. So there's that motivation as well. As we know, in East Africa, Canadian and American dollars, British pounds, go a very long way.
Yeah.
So an extra 10,000 Canadian dollars is substantial. It's exponential in a place like Canada.
And it's one of the reasons we don't necessarily see repeat winners, because they invest their money, their lifestyles have changed, and some of the drive can go out of it.
Yeah, for example, Benson Kipruto, who's tucked in there, he's right on the left-hand side behind the orange vest. So he's tucked in there. He took with his winnings last year from winning the race, bought an apartment block.
Yes.
In his hometown in Kenya. and said that that's a nest egg. That's a financial nest egg.
It's there
after he retires from running, whenever that is.
So these are glorious racing conditions. Not bad for spectating either. You can see there's one or two bike riders accompanying the runners around the course. But Kipruto is, the defending champion is favoured to do well again here. He's covered every move so far. Benson Kipruto, the defending champion, had something to say when he arrived in town earlier this week.
I find it very good. First of all, from the organizers, also the course, and also it has brought many international athletes. Considering last year when I ran here, I was invited to Boston Marathon. My training for this year was good, better compared to last year. Also, the weather, they said weather will be better than last year. We have strong field this year, considering we have some Ethiopians strong. I know it is going to be tough, and that will bring us to run a good time. I would like to run my personal best here on Sunday. I plan to win 2 times.
Well, they all said that. There was a little bit of boxing trash talk, which I was actively encouraging. They were all going to win. They were all going to break the course record. They can't all do that. But here's a woman having a dream, but the head is nodding a little bit. What do we think, Krista?
Well, Dana, it's the marathon. You're not going to look pretty all the time, but she's still maintaining a solid pace. And just looking at some races that she had this year, she did the Around the Bay race again. Like I said, she's won it many times. She's been on the podium probably about 5 or 6 times. She was second this year with a 1:49. She had a personal best in the 8K. It would have been the spring runoff, right, Michael? The race earlier this spring. She did a few 10Ks in Vancouver, 34:37, and then 33:27. She ran Houston earlier this year in January, about a 1:12:59. And then, like I said before, she did the Ottawa Marathon, where she was 6th place, just one spot from that top 5 for a gold label, and her time was 2:37:18. She's done several half marathons as well this year, in about the 1:13 low in Vancouver with the BMO, to about a 1:14 a couple of times in Winnipeg, and again in Vancouver, and then the Edmonton half marathon she did in 1:15:25.
She's about a minute and a half behind the elite women, I think, and about a minute and a half ahead of the domestic Kenyans. But let's go back to the women's elite field, because we've got a runaway. Discarding the pacemakers, it had settled, it had all become a little bit too cozy, and it's one of the Ethiopians. Just trying to identify her from the bib number.
I want to say it's a Shetu. It's so hard to read the bib.
It is a Shetu. A Shetu's decided that enough is enough. There's still the thick end of an hour's running to come in the elite women's race, but she is going to make this a true run race, as they say, and just put in a tester here.
Ashetu is an interesting figure in running. She lives in Houston and has run and won the Houston Marathon. She's run the Houston Marathon a number of times. A very good race, a flat race, not dissimilar to Toronto in some respects. Certainly would be very comfortable in humidity. This is probably a little on the cool side, although actually today's temperatures sort of tend to emulate Houston a little bit in some respects. So this is a comfortable place for her. She's raced a lot in her career. I noted earlier, a couple of years ago, she ran 6 marathons in 1 year, which is a big workload.
This is interesting. She looks like she's trying to take ownership of the pacemakers while keeping a gap. So she had to look back, had second thoughts, saw the pacemakers were coming and decided to slot in behind him. But unfortunately, that's going to mean that that little attack is going to get neutralized straight away.
Well, and this gets tricky because the chasers behind her are probably thinking, okay, she doesn't maybe have what she thought she had at that point to make that move. And it's also a brave move to make when you're going to move from the lead pack and try to take it, because, you know, you're on your own. You don't have the benefit of people around you to keep that rhythm.
So we've got a bit of a runaway attempt, at least, in the elite women's. Let's go back to the elite men's field, the international field. and we can see that, once again, those little testers being put in. What tends to happen here is that it doesn't drop the pack, but when you do reflect and count, there's one gone out the back door each time in both the men's and the women's field. So she didn't get rid of the whole group there, but she lost one off the back of the group.
Yeah,
Pacemakers done.
Yeah. And that's a bit early for a pacemaker to drop, but at the same time, get them over the half marathon mark, and then you've mostly done your job for the day.
Is that 30 kilometers that he's pulled out at exactly, do we think?
Yeah, more or less. So I guess that's just the assignment, right?
That was what the contract said.
There you go. Well, not a foot longer than that.
No, I'm done. There's my line.
Only trick is getting home from here. I guess they send the van out to pick up a pacer, though.
I think that's him on the back of the motorbike now.
There you go.
Baby Police in the centre of shots, marshalling the attention. I think that's still two pacemakers either side of him. He's not getting any kind of a windbreak. Beautiful sight of the Toronto skyline there in the background. They'll be heading back there over the course of the next 35 minutes or so. And our winner is definitely coming from this pack. And that is the 30-kilometre split, 1:29.24 for all of that group. So the champion will be one of these athletes. Will it be the course record holder, the Canadian all-comers record holder? Will it be the defending champion? Will it be somebody new? Let's go back to the elite women's field just briefly, because that breakaway was slightly bogus. Oh, we're having a look at on the cam. There's the elite women. So that break that we saw from Ishetu, you can see she's actually straining a little bit as she leads them on that slight uphill. And I wonder if that surge was most damaging to her.
Well, and it could be mentally damaging in that the women behind her know that she tried to make a move too soon and she couldn't do it.
Pink arm warmers at the back is the athlete that we heard from just a short while ago in the interview. That's Mags Masai Robertson. Betsy Sainer is the one with the fluorescent yellow socks. And there was a lot of talk about her suffering the food poisoning in Chicago, running the race, running hard for half a mile, and then having to abandon it properly sick. Only 6 days ago, but so far things are going well.
She was in great spirits this morning, and I think that the thing that you got to recover from in that case is actually more the dehydration from the food poisoning than anything else. I think putting a half marathon of marathon pace in your legs a week out is not a huge deal if you're super fit, which by all accounts she's in good fitness. So I think she'll be fine. So far so good.
And it's still an 8-woman game as the pacemaker takes his turn. Now let's go back to the cam, because the man himself is in a bit of trouble now. We've been speculating that it was tricky for him. This looks like a particularly crunch kilometre for him.
I think the men here, Trevor and Cameron, are still on pace for about 2:10.10 together. And, he's still with the group. Maybe he's just, sitting back and just getting the rhythm and staying with the pace that he can hold. And the lead Canadian pack behind them, we've got Evan, who is about a 2:11 projected finish. Then we've got a group that's about 2:13.14 up to about 2:13.49, and that includes Rory, Tristan, Reed, Thomas, and Dylan. So
that's a big group.
That's a big group that's chasing behind Evan, who's chasing behind our top 2 Canadian men that we see here.
I mean, everything has sort of gone a little bit quieter in this group now. I mean, as it does at this stage in the marathon, but obviously Trevor Hoffbauer a little more reserved than he was maybe even 2 or 3 kilometers ago. More serious, focused, staring down at the ground in front of him. And Levins is getting dropped.
He's in trouble.
He's in a lot of trouble right now. This is the gut check moment for Cam Levins.
Well, it was 1:32.33 was the last checkpoint we had. So as you mentioned, he is still on schedule. But look at the difference in body language between him with his face straining, lathering up, and look at Barrios. Just cruising, just like a machine in the blue and green in the centre of that shot. So that was a particularly tough kilometre, and it could have been a really bad one for Levins.
And if you're Trevor Hoffbauer right now, and you know that this just happened, you just dropped the Canadian record holder, the man in this race, from a Canadian perspective, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself.
Oh, he'll be. I mean, he carries a lot of adrenaline at the best of times, but he'll be coming out of his ears now.
Well, the only thing is then you got to deliver. You got to get the next 10.
Yeah, I'm not quite sold on this yet. I'm not sure that Cameron Levins is being dropped exactly. I don't know.
We're in Act 2 of a 3-act play.
yeah. There's a long way to go, but they're not sightseeing, but if you're thinking about your next marathon and considering Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, let's go to our drone cam because we have some beautiful footage of the scenery on the lakeside at the moment. Wonderful. Sunshine, autumnal leaves, aerial shots, the contraflow where you can cheer on other runners and check where you are, but it is excellent footage from the drone.
And I gotta, because it's the 30th anniversary of the race, I gotta give a shout out to the new social handles that we've got going this year. Twitter and Instagram at TO Waterfront 42K.
Right.
Is the official Twitter and Instagram accounts for the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. We're live tweeting the whole event, so you're going to get a blow-by-blow of every aspect of this race. We've got a dozen or so photographers on course that are actually sending photos in real time to the team, and we're posting sort of the visual story of this. We're doing Instagram stories from the cheer stations, and we'll be at the finish line. We were at the start, so like full coverage, not just us talking heads here on the broadcast.
No, very good. Well, there's two things that footage made me want to do. I wanted to run the marathon. I wanted to own a drone cam. Let's go back to the women's Canadian story. And we've got some breakthrough performances coming here. This could be one of them.
So we've got Dana Pitereski in the lead here with a projected finish of about 2:26:01, and she has passed the 25-kilometer mark, I believe. And then with a projected finish of 2:28:27, Emily Setlak and Kenzie Middleton are still together. So, you know, still a very solid amount of kilometers left in this race. But Dana is not an inexperienced runner. And like I said before, this is maybe the day that she's just going to say it's all or nothing. I've either got this today or I don't. And she's, you know, perhaps taking a risk, but it would be phenomenal to see a breakthrough race for her today as well. It would just be so exciting for Canadian women. And the sport has grown tremendously over the last several years. I made notes of, you know, how many women could go under 240, and the list is about 20. And, you know, when Lanny and I qualified for Rio 4 years ago, we were the only two to make the team. And it's exciting to see how the sport has grown and how, you know, there's people that are new to the sport having great times and those that are plugging along.
So that is a breakthrough moment for her. And we're just cutting back to Cam Levins. It's more than a bad patch that he's going through. This could be a serious impact on his Olympic aspirations. You can see the runner behind him has also hit the wall somewhat. So that leading group, and a reminder once again, it includes Juan Luis Barrios closer to the camera, and it also includes Trevor Hoffbauer, who is the Canadian man having the run of his life.
So the things that we have to watch out for with Cam Levins right now are, was this just he didn't like the pace and he's going to do his own thing, which is so rare and hard to pull off at this stage in a marathon, or is he falling apart? He looks pretty good still. His stride is pretty strong. I'm wondering if he's thinking, you know, 2:10 is not my day for a 2:10, but 2:11:30, which is that Tokyo time standard. If I can just eke under that 2:11:30, play it safe at this point, cash out my chips a little bit, let the 2:10 go, not worry about this group, not worry about Trevor Hoffbauer, and then maybe Hoffbauer isn't a 2:10 guy and he's able to chase Hoffbauer down and that fires him up in the last 10 or 8.
Well, but I think if you've got this distance to run, you'd want company. You'd want company.
Oh,
You wouldn't be wanting to do this on your own. Right, let's check in with the second smallest or second largest group. That is the elite men's race, the Kenyans at the head of the field, Kenyans and Ethiopians, and that is now down to 4. We've still got one pacemaker. Is that Baby Police? Yes, it is still. So we have one pacemaker and 3 going for it for real. We can identify 2 of them as Kipruto and Kip Koech. Kipruto, the defending champion, on the left-hand side of that shot. Kipruto, the course record holder, just back in 4th place. Ooh, they didn't take that very smoothly, did they?
No, that's a tough turn. One of the toughest turns in the race. Now they're running home, so they're heading towards the downtown of Toronto now. They're running through the beach community, which has got really great support. That was a bit hairy, though. That was a bit tough.
180 degrees is a tough one to take. So you sense that this is a crucial kilometre in the battle for the win, the title, the course record, maybe the all-comers record as well. Let's go back to Cam Levins, because it's one of the stories of the race that he is struggling.
Yeah, back to the story that we were discussing before with Cam.
That's the vantage point right there.
Yeah.
Right, but I agree with you, Michael, about, you know, perhaps he is just going for that 2:11:30, because one of the things that will be looked at when they select the team is not just first place, but how you do as well at the Canadian trials. So, you know, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and it's good to see that, you know, if he didn't think this was his day to be top Canadian, he's not just dropping off the course. It's still only his second marathon.
I'm going to say this to turn the story to Trevor Hoffbauer, because he deserves it right now.
For sure.
He takes this turn and is heading back. In my opinion, this turn in this race is the race. If you're at the turn and you're in the game at this race, it's on.
Right, when you see where your competition is, and then I know running down this stretch, the fans, the support is great. I always keep thinking, oh, when will we turn? When will we turn? Where you just, you know, you feel that much closer to the finish line. So you're right. Definitely Trevor deserves incredible credit for what he's doing right now.
And that's the lead group going on the right there. So he's really not even that far back from him, because he's coming up to the turn in a couple seconds here. But he's 30 minutes away from the biggest moment of his entire life.
I mean, if he pulls it off, what's his second biggest achievement? I've got him down as having 2:16 in Hamburg, wasn't it?
Which was a great performance by him, and it was very even. I looked at the pacing, very structured race, very well run race, very smart.
And like I said, he was sick, I believe, in some of his build toward that. We do know when we watched on 2017 him crossing the line how excited he was to be the Canadian champion then. So he definitely knows what that feeling is. I believe he's self-coached. He lives out in Calgary. He was with Speed River and Guelph at one point and moved out. I think he just wanted to be more at home and just in that environment.
Well, from the dream run for Canada in the men's race, let's go back to the dream run for Canada in the women's race, because it's all a little bit more sparse. Just the one guy in the Ottawa singlet, he clearly is a designated pacemaker because he's been there throughout. It was a bit busier than this previously, wasn't it? It's a bit lonely now.
Things are getting a little quiet out there.
Yeah, he's looking at his watch. I'm not sure if Dana, you know, would have discussed with him what her plan was for today, but you know, she's just sticking right in there with him and plugging away at the race right now.
We're going to get a 30K split from Dana Pedersky here in a matter of minutes, and that's going to be really telling. She's gone from, she sort of floated around the 226, 225 mark in the last couple of 5K splits. I think this is a real huge moment for her. That the 30 and then obviously the 30 to 35 stretch is going to be massive and very telling as to whether or not she is a 225, 226 runner.
Well, looking at her marathon times, back to 2016 here in Toronto, she was 2:40, and then in Ottawa, 2:36:08. That was in 2017. And in 2017, she also ran at the World Championships in London, and that wasn't such a great race for her, but, you know, still great to be wearing the maple leaf on her chest. And then again this year, 6th place and first Canadian at the Ottawa Marathon in a time of 2:37:19.
Listen, let's not sugarcoat this. There is nothing that says that Dana Pedersky should be running a 2:26 marathon. There is nothing in her pedigree, in her past. I mean, she's run a half marathon pretty quickly. I believe she held the sort of informal Canadian half marathon.
It wasn't
record.
a certified course.
It wasn't a certified course.
1:11 back in Niagara Falls in
that was a while
2011.
So this is highly unusual. It's a massive risk. It's super exciting. Even if she finishes under 2:30, it's a huge breakthrough for her.
Well, I'm looking at the gap and I can't see the chasing group of Canadian women. And we did have a very long, well, there we are. That's a long straight section looking back more than a minute of the course, and there's no sign of them there. Let's go back to the women's elite race with the East African contingent. We had a little bit of a surge put in earlier, but you can see it has been neutralized.
And they're on 223 low pace still. We got the 30K split a couple of minutes ago. They went through in 141.52, which puts them in at a 223.17. So they're very even. They've locked in pretty nicely. We're looking at around that 223 low pace. I wouldn't be surprised if the winner comes in and around 223. So All is good so far, except for the fact that we're seeing the Pacers are gone.
Yeah.
They don't have any pacing help at this point.
And we've also got the disruption of another drink station. And Betsy Sainer, having worked her way to the front of the group, now finds herself at the back in those long fluorescent yellow socks. So it's the drink stations rather than the attacks that are making the most disruptive moves in this race.
And note that Eshetu here, who's in the front here, grabbed a cup of water. She did not get her bottle.
No.
And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because sometimes when you miss a station, to see, look, her compatriot here is
it's a coffee morning.
Is being a class act here and offering her the bottle, offering her a bit of nutrition. We'll see if she takes it or not. Sometimes you just don't feel it. You don't want it. Maybe your stomach is bugging you a little bit. Maybe you feel like you got too many carbs in your system already. But that's a dangerous thing to succumb to.
To skip your bottle, yeah, you definitely don't want that, because you need that fuel, in small bits throughout the race. Just slowly let it go in your stomach, digest it, and then by the time it's for another aid station, you can ingest more fluid again.
And we've got an update on the 30K split for Dana Pitoreski, who's still in the lead in the Canadian trials race. She's slowing a little bit. Last split projects her at 2:26.29. So that was a bit of a rough 5K stretch from her. For her, this next 5K is everything.
To put it into context, for a 30K, this year she was second around the Bay, and she did that in 1:49.03. And today she just did a 1:44.09 30K with 12K to go.
Mind you, around the Bay in Hamilton, Ontario, a classic race. It's over 100 years old. It's a fantastic race, but it's also well known because it's got a giant hill in it.
Well, she's got 40 minutes to run, maybe a little bit more. That's the sort of distance of run that she would do twice a day during her training. But you can see that the fatigue is just starting to creep up on her a little bit. The arms have gone a little bit wider, a little bit more ragged.
Not as tight on the pacer.
Yeah, she's drifting back from Captain Ottawa here a little bit. But she does have a buffer over the chasing group for the Canadian title. She hasn't got that much of a buffer over the Olympic qualifying standard. So this is tension at its very best.
This is she's all in on herself. And I love watching an athlete bet on themselves. I mean, she is really taking a massive risk here, because there's two ways. There's really three ways that you can approach this race today from a Tokyo perspective, which is you run the standard, you run 2:29.5, you win the Canadian trials race, or you place top 5 in the race. Because it's a gold label race, if you place top 5, that's also a Tokyo qualifying standard. So she's kind of going after 2 of the 3 right now.
That would be definitely amazing if she got that standard of 2:29.30 and secured her spot as top Canadian. I mean, this just would be, incredible for her, and we would be so excited.
Elite men, it's all kicking off now. We are down to the 3 when there were 4. And I'm just looking, that is the defending champion who is off the back. That is Kipruto, who's been dropped. It's Felix Chemonges, who is leading. And on the left-hand side in the matching orange and white uniform is the Canadian all-comers record holder.
And Lemmy Branu.
And Bahanu, the fastest man ever to come to Canada for this race. So the cream rice is the top. The sacrifice has been of the defending champion, who was a shot winner last year. But this is going to be pretty tasty over these last 15, 20 minutes or so.
And look at this sweat on Baranu. I mean, I think, sweat rates vary wildly depending on the person. And Baranu is sort of showing that the humidity maybe is a factor with him more so than obviously the 2 Kenyan runners. So remains to be seen how he's dealing with the heat, but I mean, it's not hot out, but it's sunny and it's a bit humid. What's the humidity is it still in the 80s?
Well, it is, I think it's, let me just check here, just like anyone else, we go to our phones, 85% humidity. And I just have to put a word out for Trent Stellingworth. This man is amazing. Works with Athletics Canada lead team for the IST. He coordinates so much and is just, his amount of knowledge is amazing. Plus, he also is so down to earth about it. So he got back to me about, does the humidity play a role when it's lower temperatures? And basically, according to Jeff Burns on Twitter here, it's not an issue. That implies a dew point of 7.9 Celsius. No problem for evaporative cooling. If it was 20 degrees Celsius, humidity would only be 45%.
we're seeing a development here where Barano is taking the lead and he's pushing. This is the first big break, the first big challenge that's coming here, and we'll see how these two guys respond.
Well, he's been in the pack throughout, but he's never, as far as we could see when we cut to him, done too much of the spade work at the front. But having hit the front, he can't really turn back now. He's brought it down to a two-man game.
But isn't that the sign of a great marathon runner? You're completely invisible for the first 30K, and then all of a sudden you come out of nowhere and you own the race. But we have Philemon Rono matching him stride for stride. Rono's going to go down with the fight if he's going to go down, or he's going to win the damn thing.
He looks like his old self, doesn't he? Because he's got that little pitter-patter stride, but he's matching him so far. We're going to keep cutting away quickly. Let's go to Trevor Hofbauer, the lead Canadian man. Now, he had a lot of company last time we saw him. It's all a bit more isolated, and he's toiling a little bit.
Here we go, though. The split. Telling. 2:10:05 projected finishing time. He has held the last 5K, he has held pace.
And this is where it can get ugly, right? So this is the exciting moment as those of us doing the broadcast today, in that, you know, we may see him have an incredible day and put it all together, or, you know, hopefully it doesn't get bad, but this is really exciting to watch.
And it's too bad that he's not with a Barrios or somebody else to run with at this point, because he's all on his own. He may have been dropped off from that lead group. We're not 100% certain. We'll get confirmation on that. But that said, he's running the race of his life. Even if he slips a little bit, this is still the race of his life.
Well, we'll go to somebody else having the race of her life. It's Dana Pidereski in the elite women's race for Canada. Let's see. She looked like she was going through a bit of a bad patch, but she's actually gained ground on a few of the men around her. So the stride length has chopped a little bit. It's all looking a little bit more marathon-y, isn't it? A little bit more laboured. But she has a big buffer that she can use to try and secure that qualification for Tokyo.
Her pacer here has such an important job right now to make sure to guide her away from any dangers and to get the tangents perfectly. You saw they went around the corner and the pacer did the slight little guide with his right hand saying, come in this line right here. This is the line you want to be following. So he needs to make sure that with the other athletes that are running here in the race today, to make sure that they sort of clean out the line a little bit for her, even though I know they're running in the 220s as well. They're high quality runners.
We should note also that Dana is on record pace for the Canadian record, which is Rachel Cliff's of 2:26.56 right now, with her predicted finish of 2:26.28.
I think it's time for us to start talking about that, because it's getting real right now.
And let's cut back to the elite women's race, where Betsy Stainer has hit the front again, and has it knocked a couple of athletes out the back. Well, you can see it's all a little bit single file. So this is Stainer, who missed Chicago last weekend, or didn't go the full distance because of food poisoning, taking it out on this field. And the Toronto, I think she was a bit mesmerised there by the car turning across, the camera car turning across, wondering whether she should be doing the same. Oof. God, that would have been, imagine that.
Thankfully, they've got the giant red turnaround thing not
huge
far away.
sign in the distance as a clue.
This has been traditionally the spot here on the left after the turnaround. See how there's a little bit of a hump? It's actually a little bit of a nasty uphill, a little bit of a dig, and you can make a really good move at this point. Right around this point, it's good. And that couple of meters incline feels like a mountain at this stage in the race.
And very quickly, we're going back to the elite men, because at a drink station, Lemmy has hit the gas and Baby Police has been dropped only by 10 or 15 meters, but that is the biggest gap of the race. And this is going to be not such a long run for home now, because there's only about 15 or 16 minutes of running left.
This is conventionally where the moves happen, are around the drink stations in this stretch. There are 2 drink stations left at this point, actually 1 at this point, and that's where we saw a move last year and the year before as well. So unfortunately for Philemon Rono, it seems like he is getting the blow delivered to him instead of the other way around this year. So we'll see if he can hang on and rally. Of course, with the screen. The shot is foregrounded. It's compacted at this stage, so Rono's actually a little further back than what it looks like on the screen right now.
So he's the classiest runner ever to have towed the line here in Toronto. A winner in Dubai, a winner in Boston, winning a marathon takes a particular skill, especially that event in Dubai where most of Ethiopia descend on it in January, and it's always super fast. And he's come out on top in that. And at the moment, he's coming out on top at the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon because that is a tantalising gap that has been opened up very quickly. Now about 5 seconds clear of Rono, the all-comers record holder.
I mean, he is the class of the field, so it makes a lot of sense that he's owning this race right now. A 2:05, 2:04 finisher. Dubai is always such a competitive race, one of the fastest races every year, and he's going after that all-comers record here in Toronto.
So we have clear-cut leaders in 3 out of the 4 events, the International Elite and the Canadian National Championships and Trials for Tokyo. We're going to cut back from Lemmy as he makes his long run for home to Trevor Hoffbauer in the Canadian Championship, having the race of his life and still looking very good value as we approach 1 hour 55.
Right, Trevor, I asked a few personal questions of the runners so that it could just add a bit of interest to the broadcast. And he mentioned that he and his partner have a 1984 Volkswagen camper van. And that's
of course he does.
Something that he works on the side and quite enjoys that. Also, he enjoys photography of different landscapes in Canada, the Rockies, downtown Calgary were some of the places that he listed. And he also coaches a few athletes. I made a note here somewhere of, there's probably close to 10 of the elite Canadians that are coaching other athletes. Leslie Sexton is one who's going to be the one of the track and field cross-country coaches at Queen's University. She's moving up there with her partner to do that after this race, I think. He's already up there, Steve. So, they're putting their knowledge to good use by coaching and helping others to meet their goals. So really exciting to see Trevor. He's clearly got a big lead here.
He's got a big lead over Cam Levins. Do you think Cam will finish?
Hard to say. Don't know.
He's certainly drifted a long way back very quickly, hasn't he? So he's not right.
Literally a mile away at this point, and that's very tough mentally. It all depends on how you manage that. It all depends on the way you're able to reorganize your emotions and your thoughts mid-race.
Cam is still on pace for a 2:11:03, so it's about adjusting those goals, right?
Yeah.
You still have to have that standard, so Cam is going to go after that, I think. I really doubt that he would drop.
And I mean, in Cam, I don't know how much of this you're doing in your mind while you're running the second half of a marathon, but Cam is the cream of the crop in terms of Canadian running. So, I mean, with Trevor Hoffbauer suddenly coming onto the scene. But Cam is thinking to himself, if I can get under that 2:11:30, pretty sure I'm going to get a spot in Tokyo. Whereas on the women's side, we're seeing chaos. And we'll talk about that in a second. But look at him, he's
directing the
jacked
traffic
right now.
so that he can get his drinks bottle. The camera bike was the wrong side of him. So he's got plenty of energy, hasn't he? It would appear.
So I'm going to throw an idea out here, and this is crazy. If he's low 2:10 with 2K to go, Canadian record in danger.
Yeah. Last year's time from Cam Levins. Right, where are we going to go next? Let's go back to the only undecided race, or that's how it appears at the moment, the elite women's race, because we've got clear-cut leaders in the Canadian Championships, men and women. We've got a clear leader in the elite men's race, but we have still 6 in contention in the elite women. Let's see how they're doing. And it's 5, in fact. So no pacemaking support. We've got Betsy Stainer in the yellow socks. We've got the figure in the pink arm warmers at the back there is Mags Masai Robertson. Eshatu of Ethiopia, with a very upright running stance on the white and black, holding the curb. So they've got less than 30 minutes of running. In fact, barely 25 minutes of running left. Let's go back and see the leader in the elite men's race and see what that gap is like for Lemmy. Got away at a drink station from Baby Police, and he's opened that up now to what, 10, 12, 15 seconds maybe? Unless he falls apart here, Michael, this looks like a winning run at this point.
I mean, I think the question we now have to ask is, what's the Canadian all-comers record going to be after he crosses the finish line? He is going to be very close to it, if not a little bit under it. So we're going to be looking for that 40K split. It's going to be coming up any second now. So We're looking at, the number we're looking for is something in the mid 206s. And I think he's on pace for that. As of 35K, he definitely was on pace for that. So this is great. This is exciting. I mean, we still have Phil Munroe looming in the background, but as I said before, he's a lot further back than it actually looks based on the telephoto of the lens,
yeah,
right?
foreshortens. Actually, I mean, there's the leading four. There's the leading four, and that's probably, what, 25 seconds between them? But they're going in different directions at the moment, aren't they? The man in the ascendancy right now is the man who's run 2:04.5 in Dubai. That is Lemi Bahanu. And he's not looking back either.
The only question that I have is the guy in third or fourth kind of sorted his issues out and now coming back and
gone through his bad patch.
Yeah, and is now hunting down Rono and then maybe slingshot off Rono and go after Baranu. But
we're coming up to 2 hours now, so there's only a couple of kilometres of racing left, and he looks like his body language is that of a man that is feeling good, pushing on, able to maintain it. Now let's go back to the elite women's, because there's just one or two strides open up now and again.
Tashetu, you're still pushing on.
Yeah, and she's the one that's made the most surges during the race, but none of them have been particularly decisive, have they?
No, and this is pretty late in this race. I mean, usually you see a move earlier than this in the women's race. So, I mean, this could come down to an exciting finish. Crucial bottle pickup here. Does everyone get one? Yeah, Tashetu did grab her bottle.
Yeah, she took that one nicely as well, hasn't she? She's and that's benefited her. Look, suddenly those gaps, which weren't much at all, have reopened. Now, can she work on this? The athlete in second, looking behind. So we've got a clear leader in the elite men's. We've got a clear leader in the Canadian Championship in the men's and the women's. And this looks to be heading towards a duel, unless that group of three at the back of the leading international women's race can start to close.
So if we take a look at Trevor Hoffbauer, the lead Canadian, just looking at his pace here, it looks like he is picking it up at 25K. He was 3:07 minute per kilometer. And then at the 30K, he was at 3:06. And then at the 35K, a 3:05 minute per kilometer. So he is on projected finish, not for that Canadian record, but for a 2:10.06 time, which would be just incredible for him today.
Well, and there's nobody in sight. So he's held it together very well, but he has to do this on his own now. Just a couple of kilometres still to go. He'll be enjoying it, but you can see the grimace as well, because all marathons hurt. A few cheer zones on the opposite side of the carriageway. He's got the camera bike for company. We're just looking back to the brow of that hill for any sign of Cam Levins. Still possible for him to go inside an Olympic qualifying mark.
Trevor has some family here today, he was saying, that are cheering him on, and they're planning to get together. They've come from Michigan and Southern Ontario and Calgary, so I'm sure they've got a little celebration planned and a get-together after.
Look at his face right now. I think he's like getting seriously emotional right now. I think he's realizing the magnitude of what he's doing, and he's realizing it's within his grasp and it's doable. And you're like, you're almost like beside yourself. You're checking your legs and you're thinking, can I actually keep going at this pace? Can I actually do this? Is this actually going to happen?
He's got his necklace there.
Yeah.
He's playing with that. To be honest, that would drive me nuts if it was constantly slapping me in the chest. But you're right. You know, he's got, about 7 minutes left. And there's a lot of workouts where you think, oh, I can do it just 10 minutes. I've done all this hard work. I'm in the lead and pushing hard and strong and, getting that standard, the time standard, and being that first Canadian, like what an amazing day for him that would be.
Let's go back to the elite men's race. What a turnaround. Suddenly he's come alive, and that is very improbable. Baby Police on the course that he loves, the 2 times champion, the Canadian all-comers record holder, is more revitalised than Lazarus. He was 10 seconds behind, and look at this.
I can't believe this. I mean,
it's incredible.
We missed this break because we didn't think that this was going to happen.
We thought it was done, didn't we? And he's done it very suddenly.
Baranu made too early a move, I guess. And
But Bahanu hasn't slowed. Baby Police has just kicked in. And look at him go.
This angle's so deceiving because they look like they're close, don't they? And in fact, we know
They've still got a little jog.
He's got a good lead. He's safe there.
It's a couple hundred meters to the finish line at this point. I think they're going around. They're going to make a little bit of a turn. Oh, they still need to make the big turn, but we're going to see an all-comers record. This is going to be a quick time, and Philemon Rono is delivering.
And we forgot to mention about the little incident a few years ago where he bonked his head off of the barrier and was actually out for a bit. And they called back home to his therapist who, they said, let him start the race to see how he feels. What was the outcome of that day?
Well, that was the all-comers records.
That was that.
Perhaps he's banged his head again.
Yeah, maybe that's the trick.
Revitalised him out of shot. Wow, what a moment. We're on 2:04.5. The time to keep an eye out for is his own Canadian all-comers and course record, 2:06.52. He's getting cheers. He's into the last few hundred meters.
Can
Baby
we see
police.
2:04 in Toronto? This is going to be very close.
Responds to the emergency, as he always does on this course. Loves to be back here. He said he was in great shape, and he really is. Baby Police does it again. Rono is the champion, and it is the fastest time ever in Canada, and it is sub 2:05.
By a long shot, the fastest time ever. A 2:05 race in Canada, in Toronto. Extraordinary.
We can argue it's a 2:04, right? We can always say, don't round up.
Sorry, don't round up. That is a 2:04 high race.
Wow, what a last couple of kilometers.
Pleased. He's going to go out and do his little victory run with his flag there.
And the first 3 or 4 are all going to be inside the old Canadian all-comers record and course record. So what depth. They held it together really well in the closing stages. I think we're actually looking at 4th place here. We've had Lemmy and we've had the 3rd place finisher. But what a turnaround.
Getting 4 runners in under 2:06. Incredible. Or close to 2:06. That's impressive.
Alan Brooks will be thrilled there. We can see in the other cameras that he's just excited to catch these moments at the finish line.
Well,
and he's invested so much in this race over the years, and especially what he's done for Canadians. It's just phenomenal.
What's Rono doing here? He's back on the course. He went for a victory lap on the course.
Lap of honour.
Oh.
So there's Alan congratulating him. What a 30th anniversary celebration for the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon. We've got an unfolding story still to be resolved in the elite women's. We've got runaway leaders. So we'll just see our finisher home here. Still world-class times, under 2:07. And then we are going to check in with the Trevor Hoffbauer fairy story, because he may be punching his ticket for the Tokyo Games in 9 months' time. It has been super fast. I hope it's reflected all the way down the field. The conditions have been ideal. The word of Toronto will spread, and there will be other runners looking for quick times here in a year's time.
The Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon is already a gold label race, but we just watched this event get taken up a big notch. Yeah. To have that quality of performances at the front of the race, and also to see these trials unfolding in the way they are, is fascinating and a big deal for running in Canada.
So it was a personal best, amongst many other things, for Philemon Rono, Baby Police, in retaining or regaining his title here. And it's certain at the moment to be a personal best and maybe an Olympic qualifier for Trevor Hoffbauer. His previous best, 2:16.48 in Hamburg. He's going to absolutely smash that to smithereens. He will know where he is on the course now. What are we projecting as a likely finish time for him?
I think he's still around 2:10.
We don't have a 40K split yet, so that will definitely give us a clearer picture in terms of what he's expected to finish.
And a reminder that because of that generous bequest, as it were, to the Toronto people, that he will get the gold laurel wreath as the Canadian national champion. Greece has given that honour to Toronto, recognising the special links and the special status of this race.
He's coming up Bay Street right now. He is 400 meters, 300 meters away.
He is emotional as well, isn't he?
Oh, this is extraordinary. I mean, last year with Cam Levins, there was an expectation that he was going to run the Canadian record. We kind of came into it. It was set up for that. There was a lot of talk of the Canadian record. He had the pedigree for it.
2:09.25 is the Canadian record. He's not going to be too far away from that. The camera foreshortens a little bit. I wonder if he has a sense of it.
Trevor Hoffbauer he was a regular dude not long ago, and now he is a world-class marathon runner. He has changed his entire life in one run. And totally bought into himself, believed in himself, went for it. I think we all kind of quietly thought he was a little bit nuts in the first half going out in 2:10 pace, but he knew himself better than anybody else.
Knowing how he celebrated in 2017, I think it's safe to say that he's going to show us something pretty special coming across the line. It'll be hard to beat what he did 2 years ago, but you know, definitely he'll be taking in that moment as just such an incredible day for Trevor.
Well, he's going to be on a personal best by a mere 7 minutes. He's going to be just outside the Canadian record set by Cam Levins last year at 2:09.25, but he is way, way, way inside the Olympic qualifying mark for Canada, 2:11.30.
Keep an eye out, see if he can get under 2:10. He'd be the second man in Canadian history to get under 2:10.
And I think he's doing it because this is the last 100 metres. This is the final turn of the race. So it is a fairy story for Trevor Hofbauer.
Wow.
Look at that, the emotion. Hofbauer may be going to the Olympic Games.
Wow.
Trevor Hofbauer, I'm going to say it right now, man. You're going to Tokyo, and that was one of the greatest runs in Canadian history right there, if not the greatest. Besides Cam Levins. That was incredible. I cannot believe that.
This the stories are being written now. People are
wow. 2:16 to 2:09.
We're speechless, aren't we? This is the, you know, the first Canadian to cross the line. We know who's going to be at Tokyo. He's got that standard. He's the first Canadian. He's secured a spot, and we're not really sure what to say. Like,
well, I think he was 8th or 9th overall in the race. Juan Luis Barrios is the next athlete we're looking for. He's got a minute to get inside the qualifying mark for Tokyo, 2:11.30. I think it's going to be very marginal, this one, isn't it? It's not an absolute time. So we'll just see Barrios home. There's a huge Mexican contingent. We've still got stories of a different nature coming. There's still 5 women in contention. We'll go back to them in a minute. We've still got our runaway leader doing the Hofbauer in the Women's Canadian National Championship in the quest for the laurel wreath. And I think Juan Luis Barrios is going to be just outside 2:11.30.
Oh, this is heartbreaking for him. All that work, so close.
He was very isolated in the closing stages. He's had to see it through on his own.
Oh, my God.
And he's going to miss it by about 15 seconds. He will have other opportunities. I don't think he'll get a sense of it until he rounds the final turn. So we've had absolute elation from Hofbauer and Baby Police. And there's going to be just a slight sigh from Juan Luis Barrios as he sees the clock and comes round the corner. You can see just missing it, 2:11.30. A great run, but yeah, just a little bit of a philosophical smile as he crosses the line. A great day, but not the perfect day for him. Let's go back to the elite women because that is still undecided. And this is the surge now coming in from, it's Max.
She's making the move. She's pushing a little bit. We're seeing the other athletes tracking right now. Her stride looks great. She knows the course because, I mean, her partner, her husband, Jake, ran it last year. Ironically, he struggled right from about this point, and his race the wheels kind of came off on his race right around this overpass. And this is perhaps the trickiest part of the last stage of this race because you go over this little hump of an overpass, and then you're running right into the downtown after that. But she looks amazing.
Well, we've seen the best of the Canadians and the best of the international athletes finish, but a reminder that the women have still got about 10 minutes to run. But this looks like a really strong run from Magdalene Messiah Robertson. 2:26 in Hamburg. She was aiming for 2:22.23. That is still possible, but she hasn't yet shaken off the challenge of Betsy Sainer, who lined up for a second marathon in 7 days, having had food poisoning in Chicago a week ago.
And I mean, of course, based on the men's race that just played out, there was a late charge by Philemon Rono, so that could still happen in the women's race here.
This is Cam Levins. What a difference a year makes. In glorious isolation, he set a Canadian record. Behind him, there's 1 or 2 men. That's Josh Griffiths chasing him, and Reed Coulsat
on Cam.
I don't think there's enough seconds left for them to do that. The half marathon runners are spilling across to high five their supporters. Cam Levins is going to be disappointed with this because it's outside the Olympic qualifier, and he's done well to bring this home because he's clearly not 100%, but first and foremost the challenge is to go the distance, and he's done that. But
less looming in the background there is Reed Coulsett, who I imagine is probably running with some aggression right now, trying to track down Cam. And I'm not sure if he probably knows what's going on.
Cam has no idea that Reed is closing on him.
Well, and also Reed has probably no idea that Trevor Hoffbauer just blew the doors off this entire race.
It's been one of those days, hasn't it? I don't think there's enough road left for Reed Coulsett. I think Cam, even though he's got 2 hazard lights on, he's going to see it home with that buffer. But it really is a painful finish for the Canadian record holder. He's still the Canadian record holder. He'll be shocked by that run as well. But contrast this where he was celebrating. He knew he'd made history a year ago, and that's what a marathon can do to you.
It can be incredibly humbling, and you know, this isn't it for him. He's certainly allowed to have a race that just doesn't go his way, and you know, certainly to look at a second place finish.
So he's had better days. He will have other better days. He's given his all, and he is the second Canadian, so it will be a podium for him.
Tough finish for him.
This is Josh Griffiths of Great Britain and Wales, who's going to be the next man home, not too far outside his lifetime best. And then Reed Coulsett, the wily old fox, another 2:15 finish for him.
And this is Reed's first marathon as a master, so not sure what the records are there, but something to look into.
So we think a Canadian Masters record or an over 40 record?
Could be.
So poor Cam Levins, it's a mixed memory of Toronto for him. Let's go to the elite women where we now have a runaway. It is Magdalene Messiah Robertson of Kenya. Bided her time. She's had her good and bad spells. We heard a great interview from her earlier on. But it's not necessarily a commanding victory because this was the sort of margin that we were looking at with the Ethiopian, Bahanu, and Baby Police shut him down over the last kilometre and a half, I guess it would have been, wouldn't it?
I think she's in a little bit, I mean, I said this with Morano as well, but she looks like she's in such command, such control. You always look to the form at this stage, you know, comparing the last 40-ish kilometers of what the form was like. Her form is still holding really strong. The workouts have been good for her. This training cycle, she said, was very strong. She's got a lot of confidence coming into this race. She knows what she's doing on this course. So as long as she can hold pace here, I think she's going to be fine. There's about, what would you say that is? About probably 10, 12 second gap?
Yeah, although we called it at somewhere around that range and then saw it completely closed down by Kipruto. But yeah, she's very high, bouncy arm action, isn't it? Very intent on the middle distance with her gaze, very positive body language. This will be a big win for her. She's had her quick times, but a win here on the streets of Toronto will be right up there with anything else she's ever done.
Well, she had that 1:07 half marathon in prep for this, and that I think gave her a lot of confidence to front run like this in particular. And she made a very, very smart move. I think the timing was really good. It's the right point in the race. I wonder if Jake Robertson, her husband, said,
"Don't make my mistake."
Yeah, this is where I struggled. This is where you need to be strong.
Yeah, I think so.
We can see some of the men coming in on the screen of the finish line. Aaron Cooper there with sunglasses on the top of his head wearing a black singlet. And Chris Balestrini is behind him as well.
So we're getting a lot of quality finishes from the Canadian trials runners thus far coming in, which just shows that we're starting to see some depth in this country with distance running. Some surprising performances.
Well, the big winner today is the course, isn't it? And the race, the event, because it's, you know, if you're planning your autumn marathon for next year, this is right up there, isn't it? If you want a personal best time, whether you're a recreational runner or an elite, this is a good one.
This is Aaron Cooper here. He is a fascinating character. He sent me a message about a month ago when I was asking him a little bit of prep for the broadcast about his background. And he said, "You know what, Michael? You beat me in a marathon a few years ago." And I was like, "What?" Because I'm a recreational runner. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He went from a 3:04 and PB'd 8 consecutive times to get down into the sub 220 range.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a PB today. I don't think it is.
He ran a 2:18 flat, I believe, here last year.
Yeah. So he's going to be perhaps a little bit disappointed, but, you know, another 2:18 performance. Excellent for him.
So if we go back to the elite women, this is one of 2 final stories in terms of the winners and the podiums. And this is Magdalene Messiah Robertson with now maybe just 4 or 5 minutes of running left for her. You can see racing face well and truly in place. She's prizing open a bigger and bigger gap, although we don't get any sense of her looking behind. She's running on the concrete in between the tramways. That's her little route to the top.
I think she's going to be very close to the all-comers record as well. We didn't catch a 40K split, but all signals point to the fact that she's been running very strong and very consistently. The entire race has been super consistent for the top elite women. Right around that 2:23.17, they've not really wavered from that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see 2:23 low coming into the finishing area.
She's passing Sammy Drabel right there in the bright yellow in that turn there.
Another runner in the men's Canadian trials race.
I'm going to note that Trent and I are emailing back and forth, and he said, you know, we're seeing fast times for the men's winners despite the humidity with the low temperatures.
Yeah.
So only at the high temperatures it's an impact. And
you also see Dylan Wykes there in the black singlet way back there. Not the best day for him. He went to the Olympics in 2012 for Canada. One of the best distance runners in Canadian history as well.
Well, let's just put down a marker for what that all-comers record is, because it was set by Galeta Burka of Ethiopia, and that was at 2:22.17. Course record here is at 2:22.29 by Mimi Belletta of Bahrain. She's not going to be too far away from either of those. We've seen previously that this is a long straight. The camera brings them into sharp focus, and they actually have a few hundred meters to run. But she's on 2:21. She's got a minute and a half to attack those times. I think it's going to just drift away a little bit. I suspect it will be nearer to 2:23, but let's see. She's running strongly, running well.
You see Sammy there has just stopped grabbing his hamstring. That's got to be terrible.
It just goes to show how difficult this distance is, because you're so close to the finish line and your body is just, I don't know if it's a brain-body relationship where your brain knows you're close, so it's telling the body we're done here, and then the hamstring saying, okay, we're going to shut this down.
Trent has also said that the conditions are very similar to Kipchoge's, sub-2 performance last weekend with about 8 to 10 Celsius and 90 to 95% humidity.
Okay, let's keep an eye on the course record. It is 2:22.29. I think she's going to be very, very close to it. Magdalene Messiah Robertson of Kenya. 30 seconds to break the course record. She's going to do it. And it could also be Canadian all-comers at 2:22.17. So once again, the fastest time ever set on Canadian soil. The biggest win of her life for Magdalene Messiah Robertson of Kenya. Well done, Mags. #1 Toronto Raptors fan.
Huge redemption for her family. Yeah. Jake came here last year, ran such a strong 38-39K, and then had a tough time in the last few K. And I think it really kind of bothered him that he didn't perform well because he loved Toronto. Yeah. Kind of adopted Toronto as like a city that he really enjoyed. But he stuck around actually for a while afterwards. As is Megs, apparently.
Yeah, and they go and support one of the local running stores. They go and see the Raptors when they can. Now, we didn't name check all of the... Betsy Sainer, I think, was second. And she was about 30 seconds behind. Eshatu is also somewhere in the top 4. But those gaps have really opened up. Camera staying with Massai. Remember, we've got one more laurel wreath, one more golden laurel wreath to check out. And that will be for the Canadian Women's Champion.
Dana has about 1.2 kilometers to go. And this is so exciting for her, to be securing that spot.
So the debate tomorrow morning, or this afternoon rather, the debate on Twitter this afternoon or right now is, what's the crazier breakthrough performance, Trevor Hoffbauer or Dana Pidarewski? And also, have we been doing it wrong all along? Should we be rolling the dice like this in the future?
Well, fortune favours the brave, doesn't it? And they were brave, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and today it works. And Trevor, an emotional man, ran on his emotions, I think, and plugged into all of that. And she's been very bold, and it looks like it could pay off. We're just a couple of minutes away. The key time for her is the Athletics Canada Women's Qualifying Standard for Tokyo. That's 2:29.30. I think she's going to be around about 9th, 10th maybe in the overall race. So once again, the race of her life.
If we make some comparisons with Trevor in terms of their personal life, they both like to they're both photographers. They both like to take good pictures, and Dana likes to bake and cook. And there's one place that she wants to visit here, the Milk Bar Toronto. Birthday cake something is that she wants to indulge in after. So maybe someone can put a tweet out to them, and she might have that delivered to her at the hotel when she is able to celebrate with Josh, her husband, who is at the finish line.
I just want to point something out here. We missed Tristan Woodfine. He was the second Canadian in the trials race. He snuck in ahead of Cam Levins, apparently. That's what I'm getting here. I'm getting from a message from our crew saying that he ran a 2:13.16. So, very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
So, Cam was third Canadian? That's the podium.
What we're getting,
That's the podium. Well, we'll be seeing that presentation, including the gold laurel wreaths, at the conclusion of our programme in just about an hour from now. But we are still very much live with this, and she's going down the centre of the tramways as well. That's the other little tip we've picked up. Don't worry about the tarmac. Get on the concrete.
This last 5K, she slowed quite considerably. She's fallen off the pace quite a bit, so it's going to be a big question mark as to exactly what the finishing time is going to be, but looks like it's well under 2:30.
Well, back at the finish, this is Gudetta, Bekalek Gudetta, and she featured, but you can see how big the gaps have been that have been opened up. There's the guy in the singlet that was running with the leading Canadian woman, so he's had a real surge through the field. There's so many different ways to crack this distance. Still very respectable. Right, let's go back to our new would-be Canadian champion.
So here we've got Dana, who is just digging deep right now, looking at her watch. And of course, the first Canadian still has to get that standard. She's aiming for the 2:29.30. And, you know, getting it all in one day would just be such a huge relief for Dana.
She's going to win this race. She's going to win the trials race. It's happening. And if she wins this race and runs under 2:29.30, she's going to Tokyo.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah. And she's looking back. Oh, she
Don't
just
look
wants
back,
to make
Dana.
sure.
Just keep running.
Oh, she's playing it safe.
Yeah, no, there's no one behind you, Dana. It's all yours.
It's another massive lifetime best for her. 2:36 is her previous best. She's going to obliterate that. And she is also going to punch her ticket for Tokyo, we think.
She's going to be, it's a few hundred meters to go here, so...
So, you know, going back to the beginning of the race, yeah, she took a risk going out at 2:25. She got that lead. You know, we're a bit behind here on, obviously everyone's uploading or figuring out what the splits are, and we don't have anything past the 35K mark, so it's hard to know. But, you know, I think from the information I have here, Emily is behind her, and then behind her is Kenzie. So clearly this has been a day where the race favorites did not get those top Canadian spots, which makes the sport so exciting.
Well, is that a female athlete chasing her? Is it a Canadian female?
That is Emily Setlak.
Emily Setlak, and she is on a charge. What a day for Canada. Well, Alan will be beside himself at the finish.
This is some
dream stuff, this, isn't it? Because she could be going sub 2:29.30. Keep an eye on the clock. This is Dana Pidereski heading for a lifetime best, heading for the plane for Tokyo. And is there a runner just out of shot behind her who is doing exactly the same? She's got a minute and a half to get to the Olympic Games.
I'm happy the camera's not on us right now because we're all hunched forward. I've got my jaw is hanging to the table right now. I cannot believe what I'm watching. This is brilliant running. This is changing the face of running in Canada right now. Dana Pidereski, Trevor Hoffbauer, You're reinventing what's happening in this country.
This is amazing. It shows that, a lot of people thought, oh, Dana, you're going out too hard. And clearly it has worked for her today. And that's her strategy, that it's going to take her to the Olympics. It's just, I'm sure people are in tears right now. I'm almost in tears because Dana's had some rough races.
So she looks at her watch. No need to look at the watch. There's only one time that counts now, and there's only one turn to come. She is going to earn the gold laurel wreath. She will be potentially on the start line at the Tokyo Olympics. 2:29.30 is the Olympic qualifying mark. She's going to win the trial. She's going to make the time. What a day. What a day for Canada.
Wow.
Idareski is the champion.
Wow, I'm almost tearing up.
You're tearing up.
I mean, I've run with Dana for years, and there's been times where she's wanted to throw the towel and she's wanted to quit completely.
She said she thought about retiring.
Exactly. And she's...
Oh, extraordinary.
She moved away from her family in Windsor with Josh, who's coached her, and she's had some days where she just didn't think she'd stick with it. And to see her perseverance today, it's got to be so inspiring for Canadian women out there who are just, working away at their goals.
So we're just looking back. We've gone through 2:29.30. Oh, that's going to be agony. She's going to be 10 seconds outside of the second Canadian woman.
Oh, that's so close.
That's our only Emily Seplack. She gave her all, and she knew in the end.
Runs the race of her life and is just outside of the Tokyo qualifying time.
For Emily.
Well, how bittersweet can you get? She's going to be on the podium. Wow. She smashed her personal best 10 seconds quicker, and she could have cemented a place for Tokyo. They're both pretty chuffed, though, aren't they?
Dana, it's so good to see tears of joy